Warrior Lore. Chapter 295. If not for the fact that we are people you cannot afford to offend, if we had said the same thing to you, would you have let us go today? Du Xiaofu said to Hua Fankong calmly. The training in the Savage Beast mountain range and the dark forest had made Du Xiaofu's temperament much sharper. Du Xiaofu knew that if he and the others were not strong enough today, the person in front of him would definitely not let them go. If he was soft-hearted and let this person go today, perhaps in the future, there would be a chance for this person to secretly take revenge. Undoubtedly, he would be planting a hidden danger for himself. Hua Fankong's face twitched. Looking at the many disciples of the chief fiend gang who had gathered behind him, the corners of his mouth twitched. He said, "Don't go too far in life. Everyone, you don't have to be so ruthless. Your strength is not bad, but if you want to take my life, I'm afraid it will be difficult. It's just that I don't want my brothers of the chief fiend gang to die in vain. We have already been taught a lesson just now. I believe it is enough. Let us live. Take it that the chief fiend gang owes you a favor today." "You're quite loyal," Li Yuxiao said calmly, but it was not difficult to hear the admiration in his voice. In a place like the Dark City, people who were loyal were definitely rare. "We want your life. You can try to escape. It is not difficult to destroy you," Guo Xiaofeng said calmly. Compared to Li Yuxiao, he was obviously more indifferent. Du Xiaofu was surprised. He did not expect Hua Fankong to be so loyal. However, Du Xiaofu believed that if they really wanted to kill Hua Fankong, the chances of him escaping would not be high. Regardless of whether it was Li Yuxiao or Guo Xiaofeng, they both had the strength to fight against people of a higher level. Now that Li Yuxiao and Guo Xiaofeng were both present, Hua Fankong's chances of escaping were imaginable. Where it is possible to make mistakes, one should spare them. Forget it. At this moment, an indifferent voice sounded from another secluded corner of the hall. A young man emitting a cold aura slowly walked out. In the chaotic hall just now, no one had noticed that the young man was still eating alone with his head lowered. Everyone's gaze followed the voice and landed on the young man. The young man's figure was slender and thin, and he was dressed in a black robe. His head was slightly lowered, and the fringe on his forehead covered his eyes. Under the illumination of the night light in the hall, the black-robed young man's hair was as black as the night. Under the watchful gazes of the crowd, the black-robed young man slowly raised his head. His eyes were piercingly cold and sharp, his nose was high, and his thin lips were filled with arrogance. He looked at Du Xiaofu, Guo Xiaofeng, and Li Yuxiao and said, "It doesn't matter whether that guy from the Chief Fiend Gang is dead or not. But for the sake of the Code of Brotherhood, I will spare him this time. Consider it as me owing you a favor." Guo Xiaofeng and Li Yuxiao looked at the black-robed young man who had suddenly appeared in front of them. They did not know why, but their faces became solemn. Then, they looked at Du Xiaofu intentionally or unintentionally. Du Xiaofu was also looking at the black-robed young man. The black-robed young man's eyes reminded Du Xiaofu of Han Xian in Lanling Prefecture City. There was a hidden sharpness in his eyes. However, compared to Han Xian, this black-clothed youth's eyes had an additional sharpness that came from being experienced in the world. This person is unfathomable. Du Xiaofu's eyebrows moved slightly, and a trace of light flashed in his eyes. The black-robed young man did not have any aura fluctuation, but it made people feel oppressed. It made people not dare to look at him directly. "Thank you, little brother." Hua Fankong saw that someone had stood up for him. The other party was young, but the aura on his body made his heart tremble. He immediately stood beside the black-robed young man. In Hua Fankong's heart, even if the black-robed young man could stop one of the three young men, it would not be easy for the black-robed young man to kill him. If the remaining two wanted to take his life, it would not be so easy. As for the fourth yellow-clothed youth, it was obvious that he was not strong enough to deal with him. "Okay, we will give you face." Du Xiaofu looked at Guo Xiaofeng, Li Yuxiao, and Luo Tianqin and nodded slightly. He then looked at the black-robed young man and said, "Let them all leave their Chinkuan bags as a lesson. Otherwise, it will be them who do not want your face, not us. Don't go too far." Hearing this, Hua Fankong's eyes twitched fiercely. The Chinkuan bag contained all of his belongings. Giving it away was equivalent to giving away half of his life. Looks like someone is looking for trouble. A voice suddenly sounded from the third floor of the inn. Swoosh, swoosh. Before the voice had finished speaking, several figures jumped down from the third floor. The figures landed one by one, and a powerful aura suddenly swept out. There were 3 men and 2 women. They were all very young. The first of the 3 men had light red skin. The bridge of his nose was very straight, and his eyes were as black as ink. His aura was not weaker than Liu Xiao's. The second one had a gentle temperament, and his expression was somewhat cold. His face seemed to have been carefully sculpted, and his figure was tall and elegant. He was extremely handsome. The third young man had a strong and fierce body, and his aura was also extraordinary. The 2 women were even more attention-grabbing. One of them was dressed gorgeously in a bright red gown that covered half of her body. Her soft breasts were half covered, like white jade. Her armor-like short skirt wrapped around her perky buttocks, revealing a pair of long, moist, and well-proportioned slender legs all the way to her fair thighs. Her eyes were charming and seductive, but her face was elegant without makeup. Her entire person exuded a kind of pink and tender taste. The other woman had a devilish figure under her tight clothes. Her slender legs, tight buttocks, and slender waist outlined a perfect and seductive curve. Her beautiful face was so beautiful that it could take one's soul. However, her red lips were tender and pink, but she did not have a smile that could overturn a country. Instead, it was coldly embellished on her cold and beautiful face, making her look unapproachable. However, when she landed, she immediately went to Du Xiaofu's side. Her beautiful face fluctuated as she asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's nothing." Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. They were Fire Blade Bai Ming Feng, Flaming Hand Pan Yu, Tai Hu, Princess Netherworld Wu Kei, and Ouying Shuang. "Is there any trouble? Do we need to fight?" Fire Blade Bai Ming Feng glanced at the black-robed young man, Hua Fankong and the others, and a faint scorching aura spread out. "Since there is trouble, let's solve it." Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, glanced around as if she already knew what was going on. Her black hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall, and her voice was like a silver bell. She was a seductive woman, and her appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. If it weren't for the fact that the surrounding onlookers knew that none of these young men were easy to deal with, they would have pounced on her. At this moment, Hua Fankong's face turned ugly. As a martial marquis, no matter how bad his eyesight was, he could still sense that the young man's skin was faintly red and his eyes were as black as ink. He was definitely at the martial marquis level as well. In fact, he was not an ordinary martial marquis. As for the seductive woman, Hua Fankong was even more afraid of her. Behind the seduction, there was a terrifying strength hidden. When the woman came down, she stood in front of everyone. Those young men with extraordinary temperaments stood behind her, but they did not show any displeasure. It was enough to prove that the seductive woman's strength might be the strongest among them. The entire hall was silent. At this moment, the commotion in the hall had alarmed all the people in the inn, and they all came out to watch. The black-robed young man glanced at Fireblade Bai Ming Feng and Princess Netherworld Wu Quebec. He then looked sideways at Hua Fankong and said flatly, "If I were you, I would hand over my Chinkuan bag. Everyone, hand over your Chinkuan bags." Hua Fankong compromised. Looking at those extraordinary young men and women, he knew that this time he had kicked an iron plate. He did not know where these young men and women came from, but they were so powerful. They came to Dark City in such a large group. At this moment, he knew that if he really fought with them, he would not be able to escape. As Hua Fankong's voice fell, the disciples of the chief evil gang took out their Chinkuan bags in a panic. Although they were reluctant, they could only throw them to Du Xiaofu. It was the purple-robed young man who had asked for their Chinkuan bags. In Dark City and Dark Forest, they had always been the ones who snatched others' Chinkuan bags. But today, everything seemed to be reversed. Du Xiaofu did not stand on ceremony. He kept the Chinkuan bags one by one, and turned to Princess Netherworld Wu Kei and the rest. He said, "I will take them first. I will distribute them to you later." In the dark night, on the brightly lit street far away, there were faint sounds of shouting. Swoosh, swoosh. Outside the Four Seas Inn, over 100 figures suddenly soared into the air. Their auras were concealed, and they immediately enveloped the entire four seas in. Over 100 pulse spirit realm experts that could float in the air were definitely not something that an ordinary faction could take out. Over 100 people were wearing masks, and their auras were slightly cold. A black-robed old man stood in the air at the front, and beside him were 5 other people wearing masks. Their faces could not be seen clearly, but their auras were similarly cold and frightening. The leading black-robed old man sneered. Victory was already in his hands. His eyes were cold and his gaze swept across the four seas in, which did not seem to be very eye-catching. He said in a gloomy voice, "The people from Tianwu Academy have been captured. Ghostly Claw, deal with the other 2. Don't let anyone from the four seas in go either." As the leading black-robed old man's voice fell, the 5 people around him nodded slightly. They raised their palms behind them and made a hand signal to the people in the air. The masked men passed down their hand signals. Instantly, one by one, they took out a fist-sized scarlet rune ball in their left hand and gripped the weapon in their right hand tightly. Chapter 296. Translator. H2DH2 Mr. More than 100 people exuded a murderous aura. It was not hard to tell that they had lived a life of bloodshed. One by one, the figures began to approach. The space in front of them rippled slightly, and they no longer suppressed their speed. With extreme speed, they flew towards the four seas in. Here, Hua Fankong reluctantly tossed the Qinkuan bag to Du Xiaofu with an ugly expression on his face. He was a martial lord, the leader of the Kuei Sha gang, but he did not even have the strength to resist today. He was afraid that after today, he, Hua Fankong, would become the laughing stock of the entire Dark City. Hua Fankong knew that this time, he could only blame himself for being blind and provoking someone he shouldn't have. At this moment, he wished he could chop off his mistress who was crying and threatening him. If it weren't for her, he wouldn't have fallen to such a state today. Today, the chief evil gang has fallen all the way to their grandmother's house. Where did these young men and women come from? Every one of them is so strong. The onlookers downstairs and upstairs of the inn were shocked. There were not many people in the entire Dark City who could make Hua Fankong lower his head. Next time, don't provoke me. Du Xiaofu unceremoniously caught the Qinkuan bag Hua Fankong had thrown to him. I owe you a favor. The black-robed youth nodded slightly at Du Xiaofu and was about to leave. Let's go. Hua Fankong shouted at the disciples behind him who did not dare to breathe loudly. They could not wait to leave as soon as possible. At this moment, in the hall, the youth in the long robe suddenly stopped. His sharp gaze looked out of the hall. Almost at the same time, Du Xiaoyao, Du Xiaofu, Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, Guo Xiaofeng and Li Yuxiao's expressions changed, as if they had sensed something at the same time. Swish! The sound of wind breaking rang out, coming from all directions of the four seas in. Waves of fierce aura suddenly swept out. It was this aura that caused the hairs of many people present to stand on end for no reason, and their hearts to turn cold for no reason. Be careful, something's wrong. At this moment, Du Xiaofu also felt the hair on his body stand on end. His heart was sweating for no reason, and he immediately shouted to Ouyang Shuang beside him. At the same time, the energy of heaven and earth around the four seas and suddenly surged. Then, a thunderous sound rang out. Bang! 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 One after another, thunderous explosions resounded in the night sky. Over 100 energy sonic booms resounded in the night sky, as if they were endless bombs exploding in the night sky. Bursts of energy shot out like fireworks in the dark night. At this moment, countless gazes in Dark City suddenly turned in the direction of the four seas in. Rumble. Over 100 thunderous booms rang out in succession, accompanied by the spreading of destructive energy. The towering four seas in collapsed in a short instant, engulfed by surging flames. In the end, it was razed to the ground, and layers of energy ripples appeared in the void. What's going on? Are the four great forces fighting? Could it be a fierce battle between martial king experts? Everyone in Dark City looked at the shocking energy sonic booms and terrifying energy bursts in the distance. Their faces were filled with shock and disbelief, and then they were dumbfounded. At the edge of the Four Seas Inn, a large number of buildings were also affected and razed to the ground. Walala! As over 100 thunderous booms resounded, flames engulfed the area. The energy flames swept across the sky, and in an instant, the temperature of heaven and earth rose abruptly. Even the spectators in the distance could feel the terror of the terrifying energy. Even from afar, they could feel the profound energy in their bodies stagnating, and their hair standing on end. The Four Seas collapsed, and in an instant, countless screams rang out. Enveloped by the surging energy, the majority of the people were directly engulfed and turned into ashes. There were also many people who were severely injured and were finally engulfed and burned to ashes by the energy flames. Whoosh whoosh. At the same time that the Four Seas was destroyed, there were also many figures that suddenly soared into the sky. However, many of the unlucky ones were directly engulfed by the energy and were blown to pieces in the air. In the air, Princess Netherworld Wu Kei, Heaven Luo Sword Gua Xiaofeng, Fire Blade Biming Feng, Demon Halberd Li Yuxiao, Flaming Hand Pan Yu, Sky-Shattering Fist Luo Tianqian, Tai Hu, the Black-Robed Youth, and Hua Fankong stood in the air. However, Tai Hu was the one who was affected the most. Under the destructive impact just now, the profound energy in his body was also shattered. At this moment, his clothes were tattered and showed signs of being burned by the flames. Dark red blood continuously seeped out from the surface of his body and the corner of his mouth. If Gua Xiaofeng had not lent him a hand and blocked a lot of the impact for Tai Hu, he would have been in big trouble. Du Xiaofu stood there as a pair of pale golden symbol wings flapped behind his back. A pale golden energy halo wrapped around Ouyang Shuang, leaving her completely unharmed. However, her large eyes were currently filled with shock. She could clearly feel just how frightening it was in that split second just now. Roar! The king-scaled demonic tiger returned to its original form, flapping its wings and soaring into the sky. At this moment, there seemed to be some traces of blood on its scales. Under the destructive energy, it was also hit, but it did not seem to be seriously injured. Du Xiaoyao climbed on the back of the king-scaled demonic tiger. This is the Red Gale Heavenly Thunder Bullet. It is very rare to find and is priceless. One Red Gale Heavenly Thunder Bullet is enough to kill a Pulse Spirit Realm cultivator from the Mystery level to the Nirvana level of the Pulse Spirit Realm. The hundreds of Red Gale Heavenly Thunder Bullets just now are definitely not something that ordinary people can take out. No force in the Dark City can do that. It seems like someone wants to kill with one blow and loot everything. Hua Fankong was shocked and his face was filled with rage. Most of the experts from the chief evil gang that he had brought with him had been killed by the explosion. There were only a few left. When the hundreds of Red Gale Heavenly Thunder Bullets exploded at the same time, an ordinary martial lord could only run for his life. Those who could escape from the Pulse Spirit Realm were not simple people. Princess Netherworld Wu Kei, Gua Xiaofeng, Li Yuxiao, and the rest looked solemn. Even they did not feel good from the destructive impact just now. Then, Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, Gua Xiaofeng, Fire Blade Biming Feng, and the others all looked at Du Xiaofu with shock in their eyes. Under the destructive impact just now, not only was Du Xiaofu fine, but he was also protecting Ouyang Shuang. One could imagine how difficult it was. On top of the light golden rune wings, a domineering aura spread out, making their hearts tremble. Red Gale Heavenly Thunder Bullet. Bastard. Who did it? Does he want to kill us all? That bastard. Does he want us to die together with him? In the air, there were still quite a few people who managed to escape. Most of them were riddled with scars and looked extremely miserable. Many people looked at the remains of the Four Seas and that had been razed to the ground, their hearts trembling. The surrounding buildings had all suffered a devastating blow. Swoosh swoosh. Just as the figures managed to escape from the destructive impact, over 100 masked men appeared in the air. 6 of them stood in the front, and 6 terrifying auras swept out. 6 martial lords. They have planned this. Over 100 Pulse Spirit Realm experts. An ordinary force would not be able to take out so many of them. They are here to deal with someone. As the masked people appeared one after another, a bloody and sharp aura spread out. In particular, The terrifying aura of the 6 people at the front caused the gazes of Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, Guo Xiaofeng, and the others to turn solemn. Leave no one from Tianwu Academy alive. Those who are not from Tianwu Academy, scram. Those who stay will be killed without mercy. An owl-like gloomy shout rang out. At the same time, 5 powerful auras gushed out. 5 martial marquee cultivators erupted with terrifying auras, causing the entire space to suddenly freeze. Swoosh, 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 5 figures burst out like afterimages. Their auras were filled with bloody auras, and the murderous intent in their eyes under their masks was cold and sinister. They pounced towards Guo Xiaofeng, Li Yuxiao, Du Xiaofu, and the rest. It was as though they had already locked onto Guo Xiaofeng, Li Yuxiao, Du Xiaofu, and the rest of the Tianwu Academy members. They are here to deal with us. Be careful. Guo Xiaofeng bellowed. At this moment, everyone came to a realization. Those people who had just destroyed the Four Seas Tavern and killed several hundred people were here to target Tianwu Academy. They have the advantage in numbers. Go all out and inform the General and Ghost Child. Otherwise, we won't be able to hold them off. Princess Netherworld Wu Kei's charming aura suddenly turned into a chilling one. A signal flare in her hand shot into the air and exploded. It's useless. The person you want to inform is already in trouble. The leading black-clothed old man said coldly. His eyes under the mask were like that of a venomous snake, and he didn't conceal his murderous intent at all. It was as though he knew that Princess Netherworld Wu Kei was the strongest among them, and he pounced towards her. Attack! Heaven-gathering sword Guo Xiaofeng, fire blade Baiming Feng, demon extermination sword Li Yuxiao, and the rest made their moves at the same time. Their profound auras surged as they charged forward. They had no other choice but to fight. These people were here to deal with them. Rumble, Li Yuxiao, Fireblade Baiming Feng, and Qianluo Sword Guo Xiaofeng were the first to attack. The 3 of them each blocked a martial lord realm cultivator from the other side. As they attacked, runes bloomed, energy exploded, and light shone. Bang, bang, bang. Under such attacks, the collision of energy and the collision of numerous martial lords made everyone tremble in fear. It was as though the sky was going to be destroyed. Chapter 297. These mysterious people are here to deal with Tianwu Academy. Retreat quickly before you get caught in the crossfire. So those young men and women are from Tianwu Academy. No wonder they are so powerful. These young men and women are probably the strongest experts in Tianwu Academy's inner martial ranking. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so strong. But those mysterious people are even stronger. It seems like there are 6 martial lords. Retreat quickly and don't get caught in the crossfire. Following the brief exchange in mid-air, the spectators who had just escaped death immediately retreated, not daring to get caught in the crossfire. At the same time, the leading black-robed old man arrived first. His long robe fluttered, and mysterious runes swept out. A terrifying energy enveloped Princess Netherworld, Wu Quebec hiding, not daring to show your true face. You're just a coward. Wu Kei shouted. Her graceful figure moved in a seductive arc in mid-air. Netherworld chi swept out from her body, and her energy burst out. She collided with the leading black-robed old man. Boom. With such a collision, a large number of runes shattered. Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, was also pushed back. The leading black-robed old man was extraordinarily powerful. Pung pung. There were a total of 6 martial marquee realm cultivators. 4 of them were blocked by Princess Netherworld, Guo Xiaofeng, Baiming Feng, and Li Yuxiao. The remaining 2 attacked Luo Tianqin and Pan Yu respectively. Luo Tianqin and Pan Yu were still weaker than the martial marquee realm cultivators, so they were forced back in the air. Chilala. A terrifying aura engulfed Li Yuxiao. Runes spread out, trying to suppress the air. Li Yuxiao's red eyes flashed, and his black-red hair fluttered in the wind. A faint black demonic aura rolled out, and a large black halberd appeared. Runes burst out, causing the surrounding energy to undulate, resisting the suppression of the other party and counterattacking at the same time. Qianluo sword. Guo Xiaofeng attacked with all his might. Both of his arms were raised, and on his ancient wristbands, Strange runes bloomed and turned into two ancient swords that appeared in his hands. The sword light overflowed into the sky, and the runes danced in the air as if they wanted to destroy the universe. Chilala, fire blade Biming Feng's ink-black eyes suddenly turned red, as if a flame rune was about to erupt. A flaming blade suddenly condensed in his hand, sweeping across the sky. Raging flames spread and covered the sky. As expected of a student of Tianwu Academy, despite his young age, his cultivation is already so terrifying. The faces of the spectators from afar changed. Against the sneak attack, the youths from Tianwu Academy displayed frightening strength. It was no wonder why Tianwu Academy was able to produce so many experts whose names resounded throughout the empire and the continent over the years. So strong. Hua Fankong also retreated far away, watching Li Yuxiao, Qianluo Sword, Gua Xiaofeng, and the others attack. He finally realized that the young men were right. If they had wanted to kill him from the beginning, he wouldn't have been able to escape. Bang bang. In a short moment, Luo Tianxin and Pan Yu were forced back again, blood flowing out of their mouths. They hadn't stepped into martial marquis realm yet, so no matter how strong they were, it was impossible for them to fight against a true martial marquis. Furthermore, the other party was determined to kill them. I owe you a favor, and I also want to seek justice for the innocent. Thus, I'll lend you a hand. From now on, we won't owe each other anything. At this time, the black-robed youth began to make his move. His figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of the masked martial marquis that Pan Yu was facing. With a wave of his hand, his bangs fluttered and a sharp light suddenly swept out from his eyes. A terrifying aura erupted in an instant, since he had also reached the martial marquis level of cultivation. Brat, you're not from Tianwu Academy. Why are you getting involved in this mess? Facing the masked black-robed young man, the martial marquis bellowed coldly. You're the one who provoked me first. You should pay the price. The black-robed young man was incomparably powerful. His eyes were as sharp as lightning, and his aura was as sharp as a blade. He immediately made his move. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and his profound chi surged. He struck out with his palm, causing the space to tremble. So powerful. Facing the aura of the black-robed young man, the expression of the masked martial marquis changed. He could only choose to dodge. Attack, kill without mercy. Chilal. At the same time, the sound of wind breaking suddenly resounded in the air. The 100 or so masked men with bloody and fierce auras, along with their fierce strength chi, swept out in all directions, charging towards the remaining Tai Hu and Du Xiaofu. Little Yao, help me look after the tomboy. Du Xiaofu looked at the traces of blood on the king's scaled demonic tiger's scales. The faint golden light in his eyes was sharp, and a chill surged from his body. He bellowed, and the faint golden rune wings on his back flapped as he made his move. Who are you calling a tomboy? Ouyang Shuang bellowed, but Du Xiaofu had already dashed out. With a flash of golden light, Du Xiaoyao had already landed on her shoulder. Kill. Iron Tiger rushed out, and an earthen yellow halo of light immediately gushed out from his tall and muscular body, enveloping his body like a halo. His powerful aura caused the surrounding space to tremble. Like a real fierce tiger, his body directly charged towards the 100 masked men, who were emitting bloody auras. The powerful force he brought along swept across the sky. Roar. The tiger's roar shook one's soul. The king's scaled demonic tiger also joined the battle. Its nearly 300 feet large tiger body flapped its wings, bringing with it a tornado-like spatial airflow that swept across the sky. It was as fast as lightning as it pounced towards a masked pulse spirit stage expert. Its aura was indescribably ferocious. Feeling the terrifying aura of the king's scaled demonic tiger, the masked pulse spirit stage expert hurriedly brandished his blade. Runes spread, and vigorous profound chi soared into the sky, hacking down at the king's scaled demonic tiger like lightning. Under its terrifying aura, the blade seemed to be able to cut through space, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Such a terrifying power was rather astonishing. Roar. The king's scaled demonic tiger ferociously opened its mouth and roared. Faint golden talisman patterns flickered on its tiger claws. With a wave of its claws, an extremely domineering tiger claw directly smashed against the blade glow. Swish! That terrifying shockwave was accompanied by some faintly discernible rune fluctuations. Immediately, a large gale swept out, and the terrifying blade glow was directly torn into runes by the king's scaled demonic tiger's claw, following which, the masked man's body was sent flying. Swish swish, Ouyang Shuang also made her move. Her graceful body moved horizontally, and the sole artifact sword in her hand was unsheathed. The sword cry was like wind and thunder, and the sword glow flashed like lightning. She immediately launched her attack. The sword glow was like lightning, sharp and fierce. Wherever the sword glow passed, runes would explode, cutting through the air and leaving behind traces of vacuum. As someone on the martial ranking, Ouyang Shuang might not be able to stop a martial marquis, but she definitely couldn't be underestimated among the Pulse Spirit Realm cultivators. Furthermore, those masked men weren't all at the perfect Pulse Spirit Realm or the Nirvana Realm. Most of them were at the initial Pulse Spirit Realm or the Profound Pulse Spirit Realm. At this moment, as Ouyang Shuang made her move, Du Xiaoyao stood on Ouyang Shuang's shoulder, allowing her graceful body to move left and right. Du Xiaoyao was as steady as Mount Tai, not moving at all. Tianwu Academy students, we can't let a single one of them go. Over 100 masked men swarmed over, surrounding Tai Hu, Du Xiaofu, the king's scaled demonic tiger, and Ouyang Shuang. Beneath their masks, their eyes were filled with a sinister and fierce aura, and a bloody aura spread out. Their mission was to kill these people. As for the martial marquis realm students of Tianwu Academy, they would be dealt with by other experts. Let's see who won't let the other go first. Du Xiaofu roared angrily. Regardless of where these people came from, Du Xiaofu's heart was filled with killing intent. These people had tried to kill him and the others, and had even injured Little Tiger. How could he let them go? Boom! With the advantage of the rock descending to the ninth heaven, coupled with the profoundness and speed of the unfettered ripple steps, Du Xiaofu punched out. Faint golden runes wrapped around his fist, and profound qi surged out. A masked man's chest was smashed into pieces by Du Xiaofu's punch. Brat, you're so strong. Let's join hands and kill him. The expressions of the surrounding people changed drastically. One of the cultivators at the great circle of the Pulse Spirit Realm formed a hand seal in an instant. Profound qi gushed out, blooming with brilliant runic light that enveloped his entire body. He struck out with his palm, and a palm print instantly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Beneath the mask, his eyes were filled with killing intent, and he wanted to kill Du Xiaofu. Destroy! Du Xiaofu's body was wrapped in a faint golden ring of light. He did not dodge, and his fist continued to strike out. Instantly, it collided with the former's fist. Boom! The two fists collided fiercely. Du Xiaofu's fist was invincible, and it destroyed everything in its path. It broke the former's fist like a hot knife through butter, and the faint sound of bones shattering could be heard. Large amounts of blood flowed out of the former's mouth, and his body fell from the sky. A single punch had shattered his life force. Even the Xinyun Scarlet Dragon, who was comparable to a martial lord, was killed by Du Xiaofu with a single slap. Although the perfect Pulse Spirit Realm cultivator was not weak, he was far from enough when compared to the Xinyun Scarlet Dragon, who was at the peak of the perfect Pulse Spirit Realm. Moreover, the difference in physical defense was even greater. How could he fight against Du Xiaofu? Die! Without any delay, Du Xiaofu pounced forward again. Profound energy gushed out from his fist and palm, directly destroying the two's profound energy defenses and smashing their chests. The faint golden rune wings flapped, becoming even more tyrannical and fierce. Several masked individuals who had just closed in were all suppressed and killed the moment they approached. Kill. His figure was as swift as a god, and his aura was tyrannical and fierce as he flapped his wings. The chill in his eyes was frighteningly sharp. Du Xiaofu's ferocious attacks were like a human-shaped demonic beast, indestructible and all-conquering. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, figures in the air were sent flying by Du Xiaofu like rocks, and miserable shrieks continuously rang out. Today's update has been completed. Last time, little you did not ask for fresh flowers for 2 consecutive days. Therefore, the number of fresh flowers has been increasing very slowly these few days. Tomorrow, little you will continue his outburst. There is no other reason than to thank everyone for their support. It's the end of the month. Brothers who still have fresh flowers, please donate them. Otherwise, they will expire at the end of the month. Tomorrow's outburst will not be less than 7 chapters. Of course, the number of fresh flowers is now 804. If it reaches 1000 by 6 p.m. tomorrow, little you will change it to more than 10 chapters. Fresh flowers are not a reason to increase the update, but a motivation. After so long, brothers and sisters should know that little you does not have to ask for fresh flowers for his outburst. Even if it does not reach 1000 tomorrow, he will still have an outburst. It's just that with more fresh flowers, there will naturally be more motivation. Little you is now preparing for tomorrow's outburst. I will leave the fresh flowers to all of you. Thank you. Chapter 298. Below the martial lord realm, Du Xiaofu's current strength was unstoppable. His strong defensive power made him unafraid of any attacks from the pulse spirit realm. His domineering aura crushed everything, his cold killing intent destroying the sky. Kill. Many people surrounded and attacked the king's scaled demonic tiger. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings and charged forward. His profound chi surged, his aura crushing everything, instantly killing several people. Die. Many people surrounded and attacked Ouyang Shuang, even activating their pulse spirits. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings and appeared. Wherever his wings flapped, the pulse spirits were destroyed, and several people fell from the sky. Join hands and kill that purple-robed youth first, the leader of the masked men shouted. Seeing the group of pulse spirit realm cultivators unable to withstand a single blow, his venomous snake-like eyes changed greatly. Kill. The remaining masked men immediately mustered their courage. Most of them charged towards Du Xiaofu, greatly reducing the pressure on the Iron Tiger, the king-scaled demonic tiger, and Ouyang Shuang. Many people activated their pulse spirits. In an instant, a large number of pulse spirits pounced towards Du Xiaofu at the same time. Ao. Roar roar. Roars shook the heavens. Beast shadows roared in the air. The runes were dazzling, like the blooming sun. A terrifying aura shook the air. The visual impact far exceeded the collision between the martial lords. Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu's hands flapped at the same time. Waves of golden talisman runes surged, like a rock flapping its wings. A domineering aura erupted like a volcano, crushing and destroying everything. Poochie poochie. In an instant, a large number of pulse spirits were destroyed, unable to resist. One by one, the masked men spat out large mouthfuls of blood. Bang bang bang. Du Xiaofu's domineering aura crushed everything. His figure flapped his wings and charged forward. Everywhere he passed, figures were blasted to the ground like birds with broken wings. He did not hold back at all. As long as the runic wings on Du Xiaofu's back came into contact with them, their vitality would be destroyed and their bodies would explode. So that young man is the scariest. That purple-robed young man is so strong. What a terrifying killing intent. Many people were watching from afar. They were dumbfounded as they watched the purple-robed young man destroy everything in his path. The purple-robed youth wrapped in golden light was the most terrifying one. He was the greatest fiend. Just the number of people he had killed was already in the dozens. Bang! The leading black-robed elder once again forced Netherworld Princess Wu Kei back. Without any delay, profound energy surged out from his entire body. The runes glowed with a dazzling light, and his powerful aura caused the surrounding space to ripple. His figure took the opportunity to pounce towards Du Xiaofu like a ghost. With such an imposing manner, his cultivation strength had actually reached the peak of the martial Marquis realm's mysterious level. He was probably not far from the martial Marquis realm's Nirvana realm. Die, brat! A gloomy and furious shout resounded. The black-clothed old man's astonishing energy rune palm print pressed down on Du Xiaofu. The sonic boom resounded through the sky, as if it wanted to shatter the space. Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu did not dodge, but his gaze was solemn. The leading black-clothed old man's aura was different. With a wave of his hand, the sky-shaking wings once again charged towards him. Whoosh! The two forces of energy violently collided, and a wave of energy rippled from the point of contact. It was like a huge wave exploding in the air. Dang dang! Du Xiaofu's figure was pushed back, and his internal organs were in turmoil. The martial marquee realm's mysterious level was too powerful. Even the peak of the pulse spiritual level was not comparable. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Du Xiaofu could kill someone from the pulse spiritual level as if they were nothing, but he was still far from being able to deal with someone from the martial marquee realm's mysterious level. Netherworld kill. Wu Kei's delicate body was pushed back, but she immediately caught up. At this time, her graceful body was wrapped in dazzling runes, and the netherworld chi was emitted. In an instant, an even more astonishing aura erupted. A large amount of rune energy pressed down on the leading black-clothed old man. The aura was astonishing, and a dazzling light bloomed in the dark night. The leading black-clothed old man frowned, and his expression was ugly. He could no longer suppress Du Xiaofu, and could only contend with the netherworld princess. Whoosh! However, as Du Xiaofu was pushed back, the remaining masked men continued to besiege Du Xiaofu. One by one, the saber and sword lights were activated, and the pulse spiritual level was activated. A bloody aura spread out, enveloping Du Xiaofu in an overwhelming manner. Many attacks were hidden in the large wave of attacks, appearing tricky and vicious, secretly targeting Du Xiaofu's vital points. Peng descends to the 9 heavens. Kill. The wings on his back flapped violently, and a golden light bloomed in the sky. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings, and it was as if a real golden-winged rock had descended, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was like a supreme being, and his aura swept across the sky. He flapped his wings and swept across the sky, crushing everything in his way. Rumble. The sky was like thunder, and a series of rune lights burst out. The rune energy shot out, and it was as gorgeous as fireworks, causing the entire sky to be dazzling. Behind this dazzling light, there was an astonishing pressure. It was as if it was destroying everything, and a large amount of pulse spiritual level was shattered. All the attacks were destroyed, and the surrounding sky was trembling. Whoosh! No less than 20 mysterious masked men were directly killed. Their bodies were bombarded and fell to the ground. At this time, there were not many people left in the air. Cuckoo! Such a domineering attack made the onlookers in the dark night gasp, and their hair stood on end. Pucci, Tai who was besieged. His strength was relatively weak, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He had already activated his pulse spirit. The giant tiger roared, but it was still suppressed by several pulse spirit demonic beast phantoms. Chilala. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings and appeared. Golden talisman patterns spread across the sky and destroyed a large number of meridian souls. He punched out, and a deep sonic boom resounded. Another few masked warriors were killed. Wu Wu. A strange long sword appeared in Princess Netherworld Wu Kei's hand. It had a strange shape and was curved like a spirit snake. Runes flickered on the sword, and it was wrapped in the chi of the netherworld. When the long sword was swung out, the chi of the netherworld swept out and seemed to be able to cut through space. Swish swish, the sorcerer sparrow's beautiful figure flickered. Her arc was alluring, but it was also sinister. She was like a poppy, and beneath her beauty was a potent poison. The leading black-clothed elder was suppressing Princess Netherworld Wu Quebec. However, he was only suppressing her. Although he was gaining the upper hand, he was still unable to defeat Princess Netherworld completely. In the other battles, the Demon Slayer Sword, Guaxiaofeng, Fire Saber, and Biming Feng were fighting with their opponents. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. The masked warriors must have broken through to the martial lord realm for a long time. Their cultivation and auras were above Guaxiaofeng, Biming Feng, and Li Yuxiao. However, in terms of strength, they were unable to suppress Guaxiaofeng and the others. The rather mysterious black-robed youth blocked a masked martial marquee realm cultivator. Unexpectedly, he always had the upper hand and suppressed his opponent. His strength was extremely terrifying. The last masked warrior was being besieged by Luo Tianqin and Pan Yu. In the beginning, the two of them were able to fight against the masked warrior. However, as time passed, they were completely suppressed and could not fight against the masked warrior. There were more and more corpses on the ground, and more people were being killed in the air. No one below the martial lord realm could fight against Du Xiaofu. The leading black-clothed elder suppressed Princess Netherworld, Wu Quebec. However, after a short period of time, when he looked around again, he realized that there were only 5 people left out of the hundreds of people he had brought with him. Bastard! The leading black-clothed old man cried out in a dark and stern voice. However, he did not seem to care too much about the matter of the 100 over Spirit Vein stage practitioners being killed. To him, the lives of those 100 over people were not worth mentioning. Instead, he was gloomy and furious because he was unable to do anything to those few young men. Chi. The strange treasured sword in Princess Netherworld's hand flashed out like a nether snake. Her graceful figure flashed through the air, drawing out the most alluring arcs. Her shoulders shook slightly as her sword pierced towards the leading black-clothed old man. The leading black-clothed old man stomped his foot in the air and rose into the sky, strangely dodging the Netherworld Princess Wu Kei's sword. His figure spun and dived down like a ghost, and a cold aura spread out and pressed down from the sky. Chilala, the black-clothed elder, activated a terrifying gale, and a series of sonic booms sounded in the air. Then, the talisman moved and a sharp claw print pressed down. Princess Netherworld Wu Kei's expression changed slightly when she felt the cold aura coming from the top of her head. The strange sword in her hand shone brightly and the talisman dazzled. It covered her entire body and the sword radiance pierced forward. Chilala. However, the runes on Princess Netherworld Wu Kei's sword started to crumble under the pressure of the boundless cold energy. The boundless cold energy pressed down on her body, causing the light shield on her body to tremble violently. Ding ding. A moment later, Wu Kei was finally unable to withstand the bombardment. Along with many subtle sonic booms in the surrounding space, a muffled sound came from her throat, and her delicate face instantly turned much paler. It's not over yet. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air in the sky, silently appearing high up in the sky. With the appearance of this person, a cold aura spread out in the air. It was filled with a sharp and bloody aura. This person was wearing a gray robe with a deep hat on his head. It covered his entire face, and one could not see his appearance clearly. His aura did not fluctuate much, but it made one's heart turn cold. There's another expert. With the appearance of this person, Princess Netherworld Wu Kei, Qianluo Sword Guo Xiaofeng, and Fire Blade Biming Feng, who were in the midst of a fierce battle, were all shocked. Boss, this person is more powerful than we thought, the leading black-clothed elder said. His eyes were as cold as a poisonous snake. He looked at the man in the gray robe with respect and joy. It seems that the students of Tianwu Academy are not ordinary. It's a pity that all of you will die today. Chapter 299. Indifferent words came out of the gray-robed man's mouth. His voice was sharp and cold. As his voice fell, a gray shadow flashed and pounced towards Tai Hu, suddenly appearing in front of him. Chi. The gray-robed man waved his hand. Dazzling rune energy spread out, rapidly and violently colliding with Tai Hu's giant tiger bloodline spirit, destroying it in an instant. It was unstoppable and unstoppable. With his bloodline spirit destroyed, Tai Hu spat out a bloody mist. In addition to his original injuries, he was instantly gravely injured. Die. In the sky, the gray-robed man did not give Tai Hu any chance to catch his breath. His figure swept through the air like a vulture that had spotted its prey. He did not take Tai Hu seriously at all. To him, Tai Hu's strength could not even withstand a single blow. A palm print slammed towards Tai Hu. Seeing the gray-robed man pouncing towards him in an instant, the heavily injured Tai Hu gritted his teeth and desperately channeled the last of his profound energy. At this moment, Tai Hu could only fight with his life on the line. A look of despair appeared in his eyes. The aura of his opponent made him feel hopeless. There was nothing he could do. Back off. At this critical moment, a golden light flashed and Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in front of Tai Hu. With his body as the center, the surrounding air waves rippled continuously, as if there was an endless stream of energy pouring into his body, causing the surrounding space to ripple like boiling water. There were even glowing runes surging within his body as a terrifying aura erupted. Just as the gray-robed man's palm print swept over, Du Xiaofu blocked Du Xiaofu in front of Tai Hu, a palm print in his hand striking out at the same time. The two palm prints suddenly collided, and a muffled sound like muffled thunder immediately rang out. Bang bang! In an instant, waves of strong wind and energy rippled outwards like stormy waves. Chilal! Du Xiaofu's figure flew backwards, the wings on his back flapping. When he finally stabilized his body, his face was pale, and there was some blood at the corner of his mouth. The figure of the gray-robed man swayed slightly as he raised his head slightly. One could see a pair of eyes flickering with cold light under his hat. They were staring intently at Du Xiaofu, and there was quite a bit of surprise in his eyes. So strong. I'm afraid you're at least at the martial lord Nirvana realm. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at the gray-robed man in front of him. The opponent was too strong. He was much stronger than the howling sky demon tiger in the battlefield. Pulsation realm, the gray-robed man's eyes, the gray-robed man's body, Du Xiaofu, the gray-robed man's body, the gray-robed spirit's figure. The gray-robed figure stared at Du Xiaofu as his sinister voice rang out. I'm really interested in the body refinement art you cultivate. Hand it over to me, and I'll let you die a little easier today. How about it? When Du Xiaofu heard this, his eyes narrowed. This person actually knew about him. This wasn't a good thing. Du Xiaofu quickly thought about it. He was the last one to leave Tianwu Academy for the Dark City. Even in Tianwu Academy, there weren't many people who knew about him. However, the gray-robed man knew about him. This was enough to prove that these assassins knew about their situation like the back of their hand. If you want my body tempering technique, we'll have to see if you have the ability to do so. Looking at the gray-robed man, Du Xiaofu's gaze turned increasingly grave. The situation seemed to be getting worse. Using his mental energy, he could see that Luo Tianqin and Pan Yu were getting weaker and weaker. The two of them were already injured, and the Netherworld princess, Wu Kei, was being suppressed. Believe me, you will hand it over. When you fall into my hands and suffer a fate worse than death, dying comfortably will be the happiest thing in the world. As soon as he finished speaking, the gray-robed man pounced towards Du Xiaofu. The rune in his hand emitted a dazzling radiance and a vast aura surged, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Profound chi surged like an ocean and drowned the entire sky, forming a boundless rune light screen. It was resplendent in the night sky like the blooming sun. In the end, it enveloped Du Xiaofu. When Du Xiaofu saw this, his gaze turned grave, following which, a lightning-like radiance flickered in his faint golden eyes. Profound chi surged around his body and mysterious runes seemed to be gushing out from his body. In an instant, his aura was incomparably domineering. Roar! A loud roar came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. It was like a dragon's roar and a divine elephant's cry. His purple robe fluttered in the wind, and the space rumbled and trembled. His aura was incomparably domineering, and his might was unparalleled. Rumble! Amidst the domineering and surging aura, the mysterious runes around Du Xiaofu's body emitted ripples. The sound of wind and thunder, like the sound of Sanskrit, came from the space. A large number of palm prints collided with the rune light screen that covered the sky. Walala! Such a collision caused a thunder-like explosion to resound through the space. Turbulent energy ripples spread out, and a terrifying energy storm swept out like a hurricane. The light was dazzling and resplendent. Dang, 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 dang. However, under the spread of the energy, the light screen was scattered. However, Du Xiaofu's footsteps staggered. Even if he flapped his wings, he was unable to stop the momentum. He retreated another 100 feet before stabilizing his body. His face became even paler and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Is he really only at the complete pulsation realm? The figure of the gray-robed man swayed a little again. However, at this moment, the eyes that were exposed under the gray robe were incomparably shocked. It was as if he had encountered the most inconceivable thing. How could a youth at the pulsation realm possess such strength? Even the peak of the complete pulsation realm could not be so powerful. I must suppress him with all my strength, the gray-robed man said in his heart. It was no wonder that someone would deliberately mention this youth called Du Xiaofu in front of him. He was indeed terrifying. It would not be long before this youth would be able to rise proudly once he had the chance. He could no longer hold back and had to suppress him with all his strength. Swan and Eye Claw. The cold runes surged as the gray-robed man attacked again. Monstrous profound chi surged as he no longer held back. It condensed into a rune claw that looked like a material object. In the blink of an eye, it grew to a size of 100 feet and tore towards Du Xiaofu. The claw swept across the space. The cold aura was like a black light that covered the sky and the sun, enveloping the air. Crash! Under that cold aura, violent ripples rippled and spread out continuously. The terrifying pressure caused the expressions of the onlookers who had rushed over from the dark city to change. A large area of space rippled as if it was about to be torn apart. In a flash, it appeared in the air in front of Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's gaze was grave. The gray-robed man was too strong. It was difficult to resist even if he used all his strength. Du Xiaofu, it's time for me to attack. I'll let you see my strength today. Suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted, as if a terrifying lord had been born. A dazzling golden light exploded like the sun, causing the entire night sky to be as bright as day. The terrifying aura brought about an incomparable sense of oppression. As his voice fell, a huge, crystal-clear ape suddenly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Mysterious runes surged around its body, causing the surrounding space to ripple violently. Ayo! The ape roared, and a dazzling light shone. Its entire body was wrapped in mysterious runes, and its crystal-clear body was wrapped in multicolored light. Its eyes were lively, as if it was born with spiritual eyes that overlooked everything in the world. When the golden ape appeared, it suddenly threw out a punch. Hazy light shone as if the world had just been created. A terrifying aura erupted, causing the space in front of the fist to blur and distort. It was as if it could push and suppress everything. When the fist was thrown out, many onlookers in the distance could feel their bodies trembling. There was an inexplicable pressure in the golden ape's fist, as if it was about to burst their souls. What kind of demonic beast is that? Such terrifying power. Is that a top demonic beast on the heavenly beast list? It's too terrifying. The pressure makes one's soul tremble. The onlookers felt their hair stand on end. Even the martial marquises who were fighting, including Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, Gua Xiaofeng, and the rest, were trembling. In the blink of an eye, the fist and the claw collided. Then, mighty energy swept across the sky like a flood. A low, muffled sound resounded in the sky, causing the entire dark city to hear it clearly. Boom. The sound waves were sonorous and deafening. Runes and energy spread across the sky. The terrifying energy caused the onlookers to narrow their eyes. Creak. With such a punch, the gray-robed man's eyes narrowed as his body was forced to retreat dozens of feet. The gigantic ape also staggered a few steps back. However, compared to the gray-robed man, it was clearly in a much better condition. Is this the strength of Du Xiaoyao? Du Xiaofu was shocked. The gigantic ape was transformed by Du Xiaoyao. It was able to force a Nirvana realm expert to retreat with a single punch. How terrifying was that strength? It was simply abnormal. Tianwu Academy, back off quickly. Just as Du Xiaoyao made her move, dazzling energy spread across the sky. A graceful figure suddenly appeared in the night sky. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, and she was dressed in red clothes. Under the illumination of the runes in the sky, her red dress was even more dazzling. This lady looked to be in her late teens. Compared to Ouyang Shuang and Wu Kei, she was younger. Her skin was whiter than snow, and she was incomparably beautiful. Junior sister Xinyan is here. Back off quickly. Netherworld Princess Wu Kei shouted. The nether snake sword in her hand emitted a sword ray that was 100 feet long. She pushed back the black-robed old man, and her graceful figure retreated rapidly. Swish, swish. Guo Xiaofeng, Bai Mingfeng, and Li Yuxiao released their sword rays, saber rays, and took the opportunity to retreat. Du Xiaoyao, little tiger, back off. Du Xiaofu shouted. The golden rune wings on his back flapped and retreated rapidly. He took the opportunity to grab Ouyang Shuang, who was not far away. Tai Hu, Luo Tianqin, and Pan Yu also retreated rapidly and retreated to the side of the red-robed lady. Everyone from Tianwu Academy retreated. When the mysterious black-robed young man saw this, he easily forced his opponent back and also retreated rapidly. Chapter 300. We can't stay here any longer. Let's retreat first. The red-robed lady said to Wu Kei, Guo Xiaofeng, Li Yuxiao, and the rest who were retreating rapidly. Her limpid eyes were extremely pure, and her long eyelashes fluttered. Her nose was tall and straight, and her lips were red and translucent. Her teeth were as white as pearls, and her aura was otherworldly. Trying to escape? None of you will be able to escape today. The gray-robed man shouted coldly. Cold Xin Qi spread out in all directions, shrouding the sky. Like a violent flood, it swept towards the group from Tianwu Academy. Boundless energy waves filled everyone's eyes, and a vast pressure spread out. At this moment, the gray-robed man was at the Nirvana realm, and he had already used his full strength. One could imagine the power he possessed, and it was probably enough to destroy everything. The spectators in the sky were shocked, and they wondered when such an expert had appeared in Dark City. Who will help me block this person's attack and buy me some time? The red-robed lady looked at the sky, but there were not many fluctuations in her beautiful eyes. Her limpid eyes were extremely pure, and her delicate body was like a willow tree. She walked out slowly, light and tender, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was perfect. Her aura was otherworldly, and she was like a pure white celestial flower on a celestial mountain. Compared to Princess Netherworld, Wu Kei, who was beside her, she was like an angel and a devil. At the same time, the woman in red's hand seals began to change and condense. As her hand seals changed, waves of heaven and earth energy began to rapidly fluctuate in the air. Her long black hair that was as black as ink was naturally draped over her waist. At this time, as the waves of energy danced in her mind, she was as beautiful as a fairy that had walked out from a painting. Let me block this person's attack. As the red-robed lady spoke, the mysterious black-robed young man seemed to know that it would be difficult for anyone to block the gray-robed man, and his slender figure stepped forward. Under his bangs, the black-robed young man's sharp eyes calmly looked at the energy that was sweeping towards him. His hand seals were profound, and his arm trembled, creating many blurry afterimages. Waves of faint black energy suddenly whizzed out, and runes flickered faintly. Then, waves of energy swept out like the waves of the sea. Floating sky suppression. The black-robed young man shouted in a low voice. Then, a sharp light suddenly appeared in his eyes. Then, waves of energy spread out from his eyes. Each wave was fiercer than the previous one. The symbols were dazzling, and the imposing aura surged. It seemed as if it could suppress everything. It was terrifying. Martial Lord Mysterious Level. Guo Xiaofeng, Bai Mingfeng, Li Yuxiao, and the others were also shocked at this moment. Only now did they truly know the cultivation level of this black-robed young man. He had reached the mysterious stage of the Martial Lord realm. The age of this black-robed youth was clearly only a few years older than them. However, he had already reached the mysterious level of the Martial Marquis stage. They could not help but exclaim in admiration. This guy is very strong. Du Xiaofu was also surprised. That mysterious black-robed youth was extraordinarily strong, and he was only using his full strength at this moment. Halala! The two energies collided in midair, and it was difficult to determine the victor for a moment. However, the young man in the black robe was able to resist the attack of the man in the gray robe, who was at the Nirvana realm. No matter what kind of cold and terrifying attack the gray-robed man unleashed, he was able to block it with his suppressive and murderous aura. Halala! The symbol energy bloomed in the sky. In the end, The two terrifying energies dissipated in midair. The black-robed youth and the gray-robed man were both pushed back. Humph. However, the black-robed youth seemed to be at a disadvantage. For some unknown reason, he let out a faint groan from his throat, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. In terms of aura, the black-robed youth was obviously on par with the gray-robed youth. Now that he was injured, it seemed to have touched some of the hidden injuries in his body. All right, let me do it now. At the same time, the lady in red stepped out. She was wrapped in a tight-fitting red dress, and her figure could be said to be extremely beautiful. At this moment, her entire body was wrapped in dazzling symbol energy. In her hands, there were 17 formation flags condensed. The 17 formation flags were all emitting a shocking fluctuation. However, at this moment, all the energy in the lady in red's body seemed to have been poured into the 17 formation flags, causing her delicate face to turn pale. Xinyan. Gu Xinyan? She's actually a 5-star beginner talisman master. Du Xiaofu was quite surprised. This lady in red should be Gu Xinyan, who was ranked second on the martial roll. She was actually a 5-star beginner talisman master. The aura that spread out from her body just now was clearly that of a martial arts cultivator. Her aura was even above that of Princess Netherworld, Wu Quebec. Therefore, this lady in red was also a cultivator of both talisman and martial arts. Judging from her age, her talent could be said to be absolutely terrifying. She was indeed someone who had created a record in the war realm. Spirit-suppressing heavenly phoenix formation. The lady in red waved her hand, and the 17 formation flags immediately swept to the front. They covered the front with a lightning-like speed and trajectory. Then, the formation flags turned into dazzling symbol light pillars and disappeared. The sky suddenly fluctuated violently, and the space suddenly trembled. Rumble. In an instant, the wind whistled high up in the sky, and the space became chaotic. Dazzling symbols spread all over the sky, and the entire space rumbled and trembled. A powerful talisman array appeared in the air, enveloping the gray-robed man, the black-clothed old man, and the other 6 martial marquee cultivators behind him. The talisman array covered the sky and the sun, causing the wind and clouds to surge in the sky and the world to darken. The talisman array was terrifying, and the endless energy from the talisman array distorted the space. In the end, it faintly transformed into a gigantic, heavenly phoenix silhouette that was several hundred feet tall. Ku. The heavenly phoenix silhouette was like a living creature, and its entire body was filled with an ancient aura. An earth-shattering ku resounded between the sky and the earth. Its might suppressed the sky, and its power made one's heart tremble. Heavens, what a terrifying talisman array! What a powerful talisman array! In the entire Dark City, it would be difficult to find a talisman master of this level. At that moment, in the night sky, countless gazes in the city were astonished. The terrifying talisman array's power was too terrifying. Let's go first. The lady in red's face was pale. At the same time, her beautiful figure swept through the sky. So. Upon seeing this, the group behind her immediately retreated. Du Xiaofu retracted the faint golden talisman wings behind him and leaped onto the back of the king's scaled demonic tiger. Du Xiaoyao's nimble little macaque body also landed on Du Xiaofu's shoulder. One by one, the figures soared into the sky and disappeared into the distant night sky. The students of Tianwu Academy are truly terrifying. Each of them is stronger than the previous. As expected of Tianwu Academy, I heard that Ghost Claw killed an elder of Tianwu Academy and even snatched the Spirit Heaven Vine. It seems like Tianwu Academy won't let Ghost Claw off this time. Those extraordinary students of Tianwu Academy are probably here to capture Ghost Claw. Why would those people in the Talisman Array kill the students of Tianwu Academy? Could it be that they are in cahoots with Ghost Claw? Under the cover of night, the Dark City was terrifyingly huge. In the night sky, Du Xiaofu followed the lady in red's group and flew through numerous buildings. After half an hour, they landed in a courtyard far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. So, figures landed one after another. Wu Kei, Gua Xiaofeng, Bai Mingfeng, Li Yuxiao, and the others all landed on the ground with pale faces. Pucci, Luo Tianchen, Panyu, and Tai, who landed on the ground with blood spurting from their mouths. Their injuries seemed to be severe, especially Tai Hu's. Junior sister Xinyan, why are you here? I heard from the general that you felt a breakthrough and are preparing to break through. Wu Kei walked to the lady in red's side and looked at her. Fortunately, you arrived in time. Otherwise, we would be in trouble. Those people seem to be prepared. I just broke through as a talisman master. The general and Ghost Child asked me to find you, said the woman in red. Her voice was clear and melodious. Suddenly, her pale face turned ghastly pale, and she coughed up a mouthful of blood. She frowned and said, "They've broken the formation. It took them longer than I expected. Based on their techniques, they don't seem to be from the Dark Forest. They don't even seem to be from the Stone Dragon Empire. If I'm not wrong, those people shouldn't be from the Stone Dragon Empire. They should be from the Dark Nether Church. The Dark Nether Church is extremely powerful and notorious." The mysterious black-clad young man walked out. His figure was slender and thin, and there was a hint of indifference on his face. His eyes were piercingly cold, but his face was pale at this moment. He said indifferently, "I don't know how you've offended the people from Dark Nether Sect, but you'd better be careful. Dark Nether Sect has always been ruthless. If they want to kill someone, they'll definitely pursue that person to the ends of the earth." The lady in red looked at the black-robed young man with doubt in her beautiful eyes. The lady in red was the second on Tianwu Academy's martial ranking, Jade Maiden Gu Xinyan. Regardless of talent or strength, she had always surpassed the martial ranking. She was an unreachable existence in Tianwu Academy. The only person who could compare to her was the first on the martial rankings, General Buddy in Mountain River. Wu Kei could see Gu Xinyan's confusion. Her red lips parted slightly as she said to Gu Xinyan, "It was all thanks to his help just now. Otherwise, it would have been even more difficult for us today. The consequences wouldn't have been like this. Thank you for your help earlier." Hearing this, Gu Xinyan nodded slightly at the black-robed young man. Her otherworldly temperament was inexplicably moving. She stood side by side with Wu Kei, and they were equally beautiful. However, the two completely opposite styles were breathtaking. Chapter 301. We owed you a favor first, and now that we've returned it, we won't steal or rob in the future. You guys better be careful. Goodbye. The moment he finished speaking, the black-robed youth turned around and left with an arrogant smile. His gaze did not linger on Wu Kei and Gu Xinyan. "Brother, you seem to be injured. Do you want to come with us? Those people might come looking for you, and we might be able to take care of each other if we go together." Du Xiaofu spoke as he looked at the black-robed youth. Using his mental energy, Du Xiaofu discovered that the profound energy within the black-robed youth's body was in a mess. There was something wrong with him. "No, their target is you guys. It will be more dangerous if I stay with you guys." The black-robed youth paused in his steps as he looked at Du Xiaofu. Then, his gaze landed on Du Xiaoyao, who was on Du Xiaofu's shoulder. "That's true. You might be in more danger if you stay with us. Then be careful. We owe you a favor now. If you need any help in the future, you can find us at Tianwu Academy." "My name is Du Xiaofu," Du Xiaofu said straightforwardly. He felt that this black-robed youth's temper was quite compatible with his. "Yi Piaoling." The black-robed youth nodded slightly. Profound energy surged beneath his feet as he pushed off the ground. His figure soared into the air, and after a few flashes, he disappeared into the night sky. "This person is very strong. I wonder where he came from," Li Yuxiao said. Many cracks had appeared on his dark red robe, and his face was pale. It was obvious that he had used up most of his energy. As the black-robed youth called Yi Piaoling left, Gu Xinyan's gaze landed on Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao, who was on his shoulder. However, she only glanced at them briefly before saying to the people around her, "Let's stay here for now. This place should be safe for now." The general and Ghost Child are also inside, but their condition isn't too good. They're both heavily injured. The second on the martial ranking, Gu Xinyan, is quite pretty. Du Xiaofu looked at Gu Xinyan, sizing her up without any hesitation. Gu Xinyan was also a martial artist and talisman cultivator, and her strength was terrifying. Tianwu Academy was truly extraordinary. Those who ranked at the top of the martial ranking were all powerful, especially the top 5. Do you think Junior Xinyan is very pretty? Why are you looking at her like that? Little pervert, I'll tell Yurua. Ouying Shuang's voiced, Du Xiaofu's voice. Shuang Lucas Du Xiaofu, Xiaoyao Luo's. Du Xiaofu's voice, Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu, you're shameless. Hearing this, Ouyang Shuang immediately glared at Du Xiaofu and shouted. However, Du Xiaofu had already taken a step forward and distanced himself from her. When she saw the surrounding people looking at her in confusion, Ouyang Shuang could only stomp her feet and give up. However, her gaze was filled with the desire to skin Du Xiaofu alive. Why do you like looking at their breasts? That Gu Xinyan also has a talisman weapon on her body. I really want to eat it. Du Xiaoyao whispered into Du Xiaofu's ear. She really didn't know what could be more attractive than talisman weapons, and spiritual herbs. Du Xiaofu rolled his eyes at Du Xiaoyao and said, Nonsense, I didn't look at it on purpose. It's just that it's very obvious. After a while, after walking through a few alleys, Du Xiaofu arrived at a quiet courtyard. He saw the first-ranked general on the martial ranking, No Touch the Mountains and Rivers, and 9 Nether Too Young, Ghost Child. The general looked to be around 21 or 22 years old. His facial features were clear and deep, and his skin was slightly tanned. When one looked at him, one would feel as if he could dominate the sky and suppress the mountains and rivers. What surprised Du Xiaofu was that this general was the extraordinary young man he had met at the 5th level of the combat realm. As for 9 Nether Too Young and Ghost Child's aura, Du Xiaofu felt as if he was truly unapproachable. He wore a black robe that was as black as ink. However, his handsome face had a hint of wanton and unrestrained aura, which made him less approachable. However, there was still a faint sense of sharpness. I didn't expect you to come as well. I just heard that you broke a new record at the 5th level of the combat realm. You are indeed powerful. In the small hall, the general nodded slightly at the crowd. However, when he saw Du Xiaofu, he was a little surprised. At this moment, his face was pale and his robe was torn. It seemed like he had just experienced a fierce battle. Breaking a new record? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have broken it. When the record was mentioned, Du Xiaofu thought of the 8 million points he had. He didn't feel good. So you're Du Xiaofu. I heard that you beat up the people of the Divine Light Court. Not bad. You deserved it. Ghost Child looked at Du Xiaofu and said with a gentle voice. His gaze then fell on Du Xiaoyao's shoulder. He was curious. His face was as pale as the general's, and there was some blood at the corner of his mouth. You're injured. Is it serious? Princess Netherworld Wu Kei came to Ghost Child's side. She took out a soft handkerchief and gently wiped the blood from the corner of Ghost Child's mouth. She forced a few healing pills into Ghost Child's mouth. Her expression became even more charming. It was obvious that the relationship between the two of them was not ordinary. People could only envy them. It's all right. We managed to survive. Ghost Claw's cultivation base had a breakthrough. Both the general and I had to use our trump cards to escape. We almost couldn't make it back, Ghost Child said with a serious look in his eyes. You found Ghost Claw? Wu Kei was surprised. Ghost Claw seems to know our whereabouts. He wanted to kill us. Ghost Child said. It seems like tonight's events are not normal. You were intercepted by the Ghost Claw, and we were intercepted by those mysterious people. This seems to be a plan that was prepared long ago. Guo Xiaofeng said. He felt that things were very complicated, as if everything had been planned by someone. Our whereabouts should be under someone's control. Ghost Claw was already prepared and knew that we would come. Li Yuxiao said. There was a faint evil aura around him. Hearing Li Yuxiao's words, everyone in the hall fell into silence. Everyone present was currently ranked at the top of the martial ranking, especially the top 5 of the martial ranking. However, they were nearly wiped out in one fell swoop tonight. Everyone present was not stupid and could naturally figure out the reason behind this. Other than you guys, is there anyone else who knows about this place? Du Xiaofu suddenly asked the general, Gu Xinyan, and the rest. Not many people knew that he had come to Dark City from Tianwu Academy. However, that mysterious black-clothed man knew his identity. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but suspect that those mysterious people had spies in Tianwu Academy. If someone else knew about this place, Du Xiaofu was worried that it would be like the Four Seas Inn. Perhaps it would also be razed to the ground. If they were struck by over 100 scarlet astral heavenly lightning bullets again, they wouldn't be as lucky as before. If they were struck by over 100 scarlet astral heavenly lightning bullets without any warning, an ordinary martial lord wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. This is a secret location of our Tianwu Academy in Darkness City. Initially, we intended to stay here, but due to the distance from the auction, we decided to stay at the Four Seas Tavern instead. There shouldn't be any outsiders who know about it, Gua Xiaofeng said. Didn't people know about it at the number 4 inn? Du Xiaofu asked. Let's go. We will leave the city immediately. Let's leave Dark City first. Hearing Su Yu's words, the general suddenly said with a grave expression, So. In a short moment, many figures left in the night. In a few flashes, they disappeared from the sky. Dawn quietly caught up with the night, and the curtain of night began to fade. A gray ray of light pierced through the hazy brown curtain of night. Unknowingly, it was already daybreak. Under the hazy morning light, over a dozen figures flashed out from the forest outside Dark City and landed on a mountain peak. They were Du Xiaofu, the general, Gu Xinyan, and the rest. When the figures landed, a jade strip in the general's hand suddenly emitted a rune light before shattering. We were indeed discovered. Looking at the shattered jade strip in his hand, the general's expression turned grave. When he left the courtyard, he had specially set up some small traps so that he would be able to detect anyone approaching. He didn't expect that they would really be discovered. Seeing the situation, everyone's expression changed. If they hadn't left, there would be another fierce battle. The consequences would be even more severe than before. Wu Kei looked at Du Xiaofu and asked doubtfully, How did you know that it wasn't safe? Du Xiaofu's clear eyes narrowed as he replied, If I'm not wrong, Tianwu Academy has probably been monitored by those people. Naturally, they would know where we are. The Academy had just obtained the profound Spirit Heavenspan Vine, and it was immediately snatched away. Ghost Claw broke through the restriction. Someone must have secretly helped and leaked the news. Ghost Child and I were ambushed, and you were surrounded in the Four Seas Inn. Even your final resting place was discovered. I'm afraid that the Academy isn't being monitored. Instead, there's a traitor who leaked the information. The general placed one hand behind his back and crushed the jade slip in his hand into powder, scattering it on the ground. Ghost Claw openly auctioned the profound Spirit Heavenspan Vine in Dark City, and we were ambushed. The strength of those people isn't ordinary. Their plan seems to be targeting Tianwu Academy. I suspect that someone is targeting Tianwu Academy. We have to inform the Academy about this, Gu Xinyan said as ripples flickered in her beautiful eyes. There's not much time left. The auction for the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine will begin in 2 days. If the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine is successfully auctioned off and the Ghost Claw disappears, then it will be even more difficult to find him. If the Ghost Claw and the others are really here to deal with us, then they won't give up so easily. They will definitely find us again. We're all injured, so let's heal first. We'll think about what to do next. Chapter 302. N. Everyone nodded. They were all injured, and what they needed the most right now was to treat their injuries. Du Xiaofu did not say much. He also needed to treat his injuries. In the fight with the gray-robed man, he had suffered quite a bit. If not for the strength of his physical body, the consequences would have been dire. After a while, everyone found a place to treat their injuries. After feeding the king's scaled demonic tiger some healing elixirs, Du Xiaofu and Ouyang Shuang also found a nearby natural cave. Are you all right? Ouyang Shuang asked Du Xiaofu. When she first saw Du Xiaofu fighting with the gray-robed man, he should have been injured. The black-robed man's strength was too terrifying. If it were her, she would not have been able to resist. She was even more shocked by Du Xiaofu's strength. When they were in Lanling Prefecture City, Ouyang Shuang felt that her strength was not weaker than Du Xiaofu's. But now, in less than half a year, Du Xiaofu's strength had already reached a terrifying level. It's nothing, Du Xiaofu said to Ouyang Shuang. Although he had suffered some injuries, they were not serious. With the strength of his physical body, although they were not light, they were not too serious either. Then, Du Xiaofu seemed to think of something. He looked at Du Xiaoyao with a puzzled expression and said, Du Xiaoyao, I didn't expect your strength to be so terrifying. Very strong. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Ouyang Shuang's gaze also turned to Du Xiaoyao with shock. She had personally witnessed the strength of Du Xiaoyao's attack last night. It was definitely not an ordinary level of strength. Of course, but I used up a lot of energy. Give me some elixirs, or something to recover. Du Xiaoyao's lively pale golden eyes looked at Du Xiaofu. This is extortion. Du Xiaofu glared at Du Xiaoyao. He knew that Du Xiaoyao was blackmailing him, but he still took out a lot of spiritual herbs from his Qinkuan bag and handed them to Du Xiaoyao. After all, he needed Du Xiaoyao's help. The benefits he gained from comprehending in Du Xiaoyao's rune space made Du Xiaofu know that if Du Xiaoyao could let him enter her rune space to comprehend more, it would be better than comprehending alone for months or even years. Moreover, the effects would be better. Stingy, that's all, Du Xiaoyao said with a grin. However, she grabbed all the elixirs in Du Xiaofu's hands and stuffed them into her mouth. Looking at little demon Du swallowing the spirit medicine and still leisurely and contented, Ouyang Shuang could only be used to the strange sight. To Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao, these two fellows were simply equally strange, both unfathomable. Let's recuperate. After which, Du Xiaofu stuffed a lot of elixirs into his mouth and sat down cross-legged to recuperate. It didn't take long for his body to be enveloped in a faint golden glow. Early in the morning, the Four Seas Inn was razed to the ground. Countless people died, and the surrounding buildings were destroyed. There were many onlookers walking around, and there seemed to be spies from the various powers among them. From time to time, there would be discussions among the crowd. They were discussing whether Tianwu Academy was planning to enter Dark City, or if they were just here for the Ghost Claw. Furthermore, several martial lord realm experts had appeared last night, and they didn't seem to be experts from the four powers. Everyone in Dark City was guessing whether a new power had entered Dark City. In any case, there was a commotion in Dark City, and the slightest movement would affect the nerves of many powers. So, they are from Tianwu Academy. Sigh. In the crowd, Hua Fangkong's face turned ugly and he wanted to cry. His Kuei Sha gang had suffered heavy losses, and more than half of their experts had fallen. Even his Qinkuan bag had been stolen. Just thinking about it made his heart bleed. Gang leader, what should we do now? Should we find a way to take revenge and take back our Qinkuan bag? A severely injured Meridian Spirit Realm Nirvana Realm cultivator asked from behind Hua Fangkong. His face was pale. He was one of the lucky survivors last night, but his Qinkuan bag had been stolen by the purple-robed youth. Revenge? How can we take revenge? Tianwu Academy isn't something we can afford to offend. Hua Fangkong said solemnly. He also wanted to take revenge and take back his Qinkuan bag. However, he knew that the youths from Tianwu Academy might be young, but each of them was more terrifying than the last. None of them were easy to deal with. This was especially true for the purple-robed young man who had robbed his Qinkuan bag. Hua Fangkong could tell that the purple-robed young man's strength might not be the most terrifying among the crowd, but his overbearing killing intent was the most terrifying. Yesterday, more than 100 masked Meridian Spirit Realm cultivators had been suppressed and slaughtered by the purple-robed youth alone. His actions were clean and swift, and the thought of it was enough to make one's hair stand on end. Gang leader, we don't have a choice. However, we can look for the Twin Hatred Sect, Black Fiend Sect, Mu Clan Fort, or Myriad Cloud Pavilion. They have been trying to rope you in. If we ask for their help, I believe they will not reject. The pale-faced Meridian Spirit Realm Nirvana Realm cultivator said. Hearing this, Hua Fangkong's face darkened. He looked straight at the Meridian Spirit Realm Nirvana Realm cultivator and shouted softly, Idiot, do you really think they are trying to rope us in? Their goal is to annex us. Once we ask for their help, I'm afraid we won't be able to get away. There won't be a chief evil gang in the future. Early in the morning, looking from afar, the sky seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of translucent fog. Then, the sunlight shone, filling the sky with a faint golden glow. In a small hall in a secluded courtyard, 8 people stood. The skinny Ghost Claw, the gray-robed man, the black-robed old man with a mask, and the other 5 masked martial marquee realm cultivators. Did you let the general and Ghost Child escape? The black-robed old man asked Ghost Claw. His eyes were always suffused with a faint chill, and he looked sinister. I was careless. I originally wanted to tear the general apart with my own hands. Who knew that the 2 brats had so many trump cards on them? They trapped me for a while and then escaped. Ghost Claw's face was gloomy. His body was all skin and bones, and his eyes were sunken deep into his eye sockets. At this moment, his eyes were extremely sinister. He looked at the black-robed old man and the others and said, "So many of you attacked together, but you couldn't do anything to the others. Is this all there is to it? The 7 evils of the dark underworld are a little overrated." Ghost Claw, what do you mean? The black-robed old man's eyes were cold, and his voice was sinister. He said in a deep voice, "If it weren't for some unforeseen circumstances, those people from the 4 seas wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. I don't mean anything. The most important thing is to kill those brats from Tianwu Academy as soon as possible. Let's hurry up and make our preparations. The commotion you caused this time is too big. Based on my understanding of Darkness City, I'm afraid that the 1 pavilion, 1 castle, and 2 sects have already noticed this. This is Darkness City, not the Dark Nether sect. If we cause too big of a commotion, I'm afraid those fellows will be displeased." Ghost Claw's eyes were filled with a sharp killing intent. His shriveled hand was like a ghost claw, and a baleful aura was faintly discernible. "So what if it's the 1 pavilion, 1 castle, and 2 sects? My dark underworld sect isn't afraid of them," the black-robed old man said in a deep voice. "All right, let's go and recover first. Those brats from Tianwu Academy will definitely appear again. As long as the profound spirit Heaven Vine is still in Dark City, they won't hide. We'll think of a way to deal with them then," the gray-robed old man said. The gray-robed man raised his head slightly. Beneath the gray robe, there was a long scar on his forehead that was covered by the hair on his forehead. However, it was still very eye-catching. Within his eyes, there was a gray-white light. Ghost Claw and the black-robed old man didn't say anything else and left separately. The gray-robed old man stood quietly for a moment before leaving the courtyard. A moment later, the figure of the gray-robed man appeared in another secluded courtyard. He pushed open the half-closed door and gently walked in. There was a young man sitting in the room at this time. He looked to be around 25 or 26 years old. His extremely glossy long silver hair draped down like a painful waterfall. It was loosely tied up with a monochromatic ribbon. He looked handsome. His eyes were cold and unapproachable, causing people to involuntarily feel a chill in their hearts. "You failed." The gray-robed old man walked into the room. The young man didn't even raise his gaze and continued sitting there. He looked out of the window and murmured, "It's a new day. A beautiful day has begun." There were some unforeseen events. Someone interfered, and he isn't weak. There was also a strange demonic beast that appeared, and it was very powerful. The gray-robed old man stood there and didn't get too close. His eyes were filled with respect, but there was also a hint of wariness and fear. It was an indescribably complicated gaze. A failure is a failure. There's no need to find excuses. You guys caused too much of a commotion last night, but the results weren't ideal. I'm worried about you guys, so I came here. At this moment, the pavilion and castle should have already noticed you guys. Be more careful in the future and follow the plan," the young man said calmly. His voice had a fleeting feeling as he continued, "It's better to be careful. I heard that the Dark City is much more complicated than the pavilion and castle. This is also the main reason why no one has dared to touch the Dark Forest for so many years. Even though I don't believe it, I'm afraid that those people have been misled by the rumors. However, since the sect master has instructed us to handle the matter with Tianwu Academy well, we should be more careful. It's enough to kill a few people from Tianwu Academy. Everything that happens after that will have nothing to do with us. Also, we have to bring back the profound spirit Heaven Vine. The sect master wants to forge a Tao artifact for it." "Yes." The gray-robed old man nodded and replied respectfully, "Did you meet that young man named Du Xiaofu?" The silver-haired young man asked. The gray-robed old man's eyes flickered and he replied, "We fought. He's only at the great perfection of pulsation realm, but his strength is sufficient to contend against martial marquis initial stage cultivators. His physical body is extremely terrifying." Thanks to question 83B2BC6329E05B69D44444DB93 for the tip. It's the end of the month, so don't forget about the fresh flowers. Shall you? Go back to writing. Ew. Chapter 303. Time passed quickly, and a day and night passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, the brilliant sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves of the dense forest. Through the morning fog, the rays of light scattered across the dense forest. Inside the cave, the faint golden halo around Du Shaogang slowly retracted, like a small golden snake, mysteriously entering his body. Who? A mouthful of turbid qi flowed from his abdomen down his throat, and finally exhaled through his mouth. His eyelashes trembled a few times, and Du Xiaofu opened his eyes. Faint golden light flickered in his eyes, faintly exuding a domineering sharpness and intimidating sharpness, following which his eyes gradually regained their clarity and then became more profound. A moment later, in a cave, the general, Gu Xinyan, Ghost Child, Du Xiaofu, and the others gathered. After recuperating for a day and night, and with the help of many pills, everyone's injuries had mostly recovered. However, to Tai Hu, Luo Tianchen, and Pan Yu, who were already heavily injured, their injuries were still severe. To completely recover was definitely not something that could be done in a short period of time. Tomorrow is the day of the auction for the profound spirit heavenly vine. The general's gaze swept across everyone, his brows slightly furrowed, and his eyes were filled with seriousness. Hearing this, everyone's brows furrowed, and the cave was silent for a moment. Everyone knew that the Academy wanted them to retrieve the profound spirit heavenly vine and capture Ghost Claw, but the difficulty seemed to be much greater than they had imagined. Those mysterious people were almost certainly related to Ghost Claw. Even if everyone attacked together, it would be difficult to contend against those people, and it would be even more difficult to retrieve the profound spirit heavenly vine that was about to be auctioned off. Even if we inform the Academy elders now, I'm afraid it will be too late, Luo Tianchen said. From Dark City to Tianwu Academy, even for a martial lord, it would take at least 2 to 3 days. If they sent the news back to the Academy elders now, even if the Academy elders came to Dark City, who knew how many days it would take? Naturally, it would be difficult to make it in time. By the time the elders arrived, the profound spirit heavenly vine would probably have fallen into someone else's hands. Moreover, everyone knew in their hearts that if the Academy's elders could appear in the Dark City, they would have gone to the Dark City long ago and wouldn't need to attack them. Does anyone have any thoughts? If not, I think we can only enter the Dark City again. Even if we have to snatch it by force, we have to retrieve the profound spirit heavenly vine. If the profound spirit heavenly vine and ghastly claw leave the Dark City, the reputation of our Tianwu Academy will be completely tarnished. The general looked at the crowd and sighed. Everyone was silent for a while. Guo Xiaofeng raised his head slightly and said, "Let's take it. The mysterious spirit heavenspan vine can't leave Dark City. If we just watch the mysterious spirit heavenspan vine and the ghost claw leave, we won't be able to go out and meet people in the future." Snatch. Ghost Child simply uttered a single word, and a faint murderous aura emanated from his body. The situation is different now. If we go and snatch it, let's not talk about the fact that the Mu family fort is watching over the profound spirit heavenly vine. Even if the elders go and snatch it, I'm afraid they won't succeed. Moreover, it's difficult for us to do anything to Ghastly Claw and the others, Gu Xinyan said. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a dignified brilliance. Upon hearing this, everyone's expression changed. Naturally, everyone knew what Gu Xinyan had said. Is the Mu family fort watching over the profound spirit heavenly vine now? Du Xiaofu asked the crowd. That's right. As far as we know, the Mu family fort is in charge of the auction. Wu Kei nodded and said. Du Xiaofu raised his head and pondered for a while. He then looked at the crowd and said, "How about this? Let me go to the auction alone. Don't tell me you want to bid for the profound spirit heavenly vine at the auction. We don't have the capital to get the profound spirit heavenly vine. Guo Xiaofeng reminded Du Xiaofu again. If you want to go to the auction, I'm afraid it won't work. Gu Xinyan also said to Du Xiaofu. She looked at Du Xiaofu with a doubtful gaze and said softly, the profound spirit heavenly vine is priceless. Since the news of the auction spread, the entire Dark City has been in an uproar. According to the news I received, even the major forces in the surrounding empires have sent experts. If we want to bid for it, let alone the fact that we can't afford the price. The most important thing is that the Academy asked us to snatch it, not auction it. They didn't give us any resources to bid for it, so we can't compete at all. Gu Xinyan paused and looked at Du Xiaofu's eyes. There was a slight fluctuation in her eyes. She opened her red lips and faintly revealed her teeth. She continued, even if we manage to get the profound spirit heavenly vine at the auction, I'm afraid that as soon as we leave the Dark City, we will immediately be snatched by many forces. This is the Dark City and the Dark Forest. No one will follow the rules. Du Xiaofu had a faint, bitter smile on his face. He shook his head and said, I don't plan on bidding for the profound spirit heavenly vine. Since no one has any ideas right now, I want to give it a try. As for whether it will work or not, I don't know right now. Everyone was silent when they heard this. After a while, the general looked at Du Xiaofu and said, What do you plan to do? Can you tell us? Du Xiaofu shook his head and said, I haven't thought about it yet, but it is better than doing nothing. Maybe I will be able to come up with a solution when the time comes. In fact, it was not that Du Xiaofu didn't have a plan. However, since they suspected that there was a spy in the academy, Du Xiaofu had to be careful and keep it a secret from everyone. It was always better to be careful. I agree with you. It is better than doing nothing. Maybe we will be able to come up with a solution when the time comes. Gu Xinyan looked straight at Du Xiaofu's clear eyes and said, I'll go with you so that we can take care of each other. I should be more familiar with the Dark City than you. Maybe I can help you a little. Well, Du Xiaofu hesitated for a bit before nodding his head. Although I don't know what you plan to do, if you need my help, just let me know. Or we can all go together, just the two of you. If something happens, there will be no one to take care of you. The general said to Du Xiaofu, I've almost recovered. How about I go with you? Li Yuxiao also said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said, It will be inconvenient if there are too many people. It will attract attention. Du Xiaofu looked at the general and said, There really is something that I need your help with. Several hours later, outside the Dark City, in front of the huge city gate, Du Xiaofu looked at a woman wearing a cloak and a light red veil covering her face and said, That's right, it should be like this. The effect is much better. Am I really that eye-catching? Under the red veil, a pair of beautiful eyes gazed at Du Xiaofu. She smiled faintly and said, However, I don't understand why you have to wear a cloak. It seems that not many people will look at you. Of course, you are so beautiful that you will attract attention wherever you go. I'm afraid that it won't be long before those people from last night notice us. As for me, those people from last night will definitely remember me. It won't be good if they recognize me. In addition, I also have some enemies in the Dark City. Now is not the time to deal with them. So, hiding for the time being is not wrong. Du Xiaofu said helplessly. In order to make it easier to enter the Dark City, he had to wear a black cloak. First, he did not want to attract the attention of those mysterious assassins from last night. Second, Du Xiaofu did not forget that he still had an enemy in the Dark City, the Black Evil Sect. At this time, Du Xiaofu knew that it was not the time to deal with the Black Evil Sect. Today, he entered the Dark City again in disguise. Du Xiaofu only brought Du Xiaoyao and Gu Xinyan. He let Ouyang Shuang and the King's Scaled Demonic Tiger stay with the general and the others. First, he was afraid that too many people would attract attention. In addition, Ouyang Shuang and the King's Scaled Demonic Tiger's strength was not enough. If something happened, Du Xiaofu was afraid that he would not be able to protect them. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Gu Xinyan smiled lightly. Her smile was beautiful, and her face under the red veil was breathtaking. However, no one could see it at this time. She said, I didn't think that you would have enemies. Being your enemy must not be too good. She still remembered that outside the Peace Square, She had seen with her own eyes how fierce this young man was. When he fought, he would not be polite at all. Du Xiaofu's clear eyes flashed with a cold light. He naturally had to take revenge on the Black Evil sect, but now was not the time. Of course, Du Xiaofu also knew that his current strength was not enough to deal with the entire Black Evil sect. He knew from Wu Kei that there were martial kings in the one pavilion, one castle, and two sects in the Dark City. It was rare to see them in the outside world. It seems that many people have spiritual weapons and practitioner weapons on them. I want to eat them, Du Xiaoyao suddenly said. She squatted on Du Xiaofu's shoulder and looked at the group of brightly dressed figures entering the city. She felt the aura of many spiritual weapons, and some people even had practitioner weapons on them. She had already looked at Du Xiaoyao many times and heard Du Xiaoyao's words along the way. However, when she heard Du Xiaoyao say that she wanted to eat spiritual weapons and practitioner weapons, Gu Xinyan could not help but tremble. Then, Gu Xinyan's eyes followed Du Xiaoyao's gaze and looked at the group of brightly dressed figures entering the city. She glanced at them, and under the red veil, her eyes narrowed slightly. She was like a misty rain that had gathered for half a lifetime. She said softly, "Tomorrow is the auction for the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine. Many forces, including the forces of the surrounding empires, have rushed into the Dark City. I'm afraid that tomorrow's auction will be very popular. However, no matter who obtains the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine in the end, danger will be everywhere." What are those people's motives? Du Xiaofu murmured. If it was for the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine, Ghost Claw and the others could have fled far away. Chapter 304. However, if a treasure like the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine was not their goal, then what was their real goal? Du Xiaofu was puzzled and could not figure it out. Where are we going now? Gu Xinyan looked at Du Xiaofu through her red veil. Her lips moved slightly, and the corners of her mouth curved into a perfect smile. Du Xiaofu said, "To the auction at the Mu clan fort. I want to take a look first. Do you know where it is?" "I do." Gu Xinyan nodded. In the Dark City, the streets and alleys were bustling with activity during the day. The crowd was surging, accompanied by the sound of chatter. In the streets and alleys, many unfamiliar figures could be seen over the past 2 days, but they did not attract too much attention. For the Dark City, it was normal for strangers to appear in the Dark City. In the streets and alleys, among the bustling crowd, there was no lack of people discussing the great battle in the Dark City last night. Many martial marquee realm experts fought, and it was extremely shocking. When the crowd vividly described it, with some exaggeration, the rumors became more and more outrageous. The Mu Clan Trading Company stood on the busiest and most prosperous street in the Dark City. The majestic building stood tall and occupied a large area, almost occupying half of the street. In the trading company, there was a dazzling array of goods. It was said that in the VIP lounge on the second floor, even black-level upper cultivation methods, the secret bones of powerful demonic beasts on the earthly beast ranking, noble-grade martial techniques, noble-grade elixirs, and so on could be purchased. However, even in the lawless Dark City, where strength reigned supreme, no one dared to have any ideas about the Mu Clan Trading Company. This was because everyone knew that the Mu Clan Fort was behind the Mu Clan Trading Company. The Mu Clan Fort was one of the 4 major forces in the Dark City. No one dared to have any ideas about the Mu Clan Trading Company. In the lawless Dark City, strength reigned supreme. In fact, the biggest rule was that strength reigned supreme. The Mu Clan Fort was one of the 4 major forces in the Dark City. It represented the forces in the Dark City. Over the years, there was no lack of people who had challenged the authority of the Mu Clan Fort. However, there was no doubt that those people had completely disappeared from Dark City and never appeared again. To the side of the Mu Family Trading Company, there was a rather dilapidated alley. However, it was extremely clean, and there was a simple and unadorned feel to it. It seemed that this alley had existed for many years, and even after being battered by the wind and rain, it still stood tall. On the side of the alley, there was a shabby little hut that looked out of place. Outside the hut, on top of the alley, was a thick and shabby canvas that could shelter them from the wind and rain. The alley was occupied, and 5 or 6 tables were set up. An old granny and her grandson were selling tea. In the morning, there were not many people drinking tea. There were only 2 tables. One of the tables was occupied by Du Xiaofu, who was wearing a cloak, and Gu Xinyan, whose face was covered by a red veil. In a place like Dark City, there were many people who wore cloaks or even changed their appearance, so no one found it strange. No one would come to inquire about their identities. After all, in Dark City, there were many fugitives from various empires, people who were hiding from their enemies, and people who lived in seclusion. There were many different kinds of people. At the table on the other side, there seemed to be 3 burly men sitting. They did not lower their voices as they talked about some of the dirty things that happened last night. From time to time, a few extremely rude words came out of their mouths. As Gu Xinyan listened, her face under the red veil blushed a little. That is the Mu Clan Trading Company. The auction will be held there tomorrow. Gu Xinyan looked at the magnificent building in front of her and said to Du Xiaofu. Under the red veil, her red lips slightly parted as she took a sip of tea. Then, her charming face slightly changed as she said with some surprise, I never imagined that the tea from such a small tea stall would be so delicious. However, business doesn't seem to be too good. Strange, if this was the imperial capital, it would be full of customers. Du Xiaofu also took a sip of tea. It was fragrant as it entered his mouth. He said, it's not some famous tea, but it's very delicious. However, the people in Dark City live a life of licking blood from the edge of the blade. I'm afraid that not many people have the leisure to drink tea. Naturally, business will be mediocre. Then, Du Xiaofu's gaze turned towards the Mu Clan Trading Company on the other side of the street. No fluctuation could be seen in his clear eyes. Have you thought of a way? Gu Xinyan asked Du Xiaofu. No, but I plan to go inside and look for someone. Hopefully, I can find him. Du Xiaofu said, Dear customers, you forgot to leave the money for the tea. Just as Du Xiaofu was about to leave, a clear voice rang out. A 12 or 13-year-old boy came forward. He had a round face, 2 thin eyebrows, a pair of big eyes, and a slightly small nose. He could be considered well-proportioned. His eyes were also very bright, revealing a sense of innocence. Du Xiaofu thought that the little boy was reminding him. Only when he turned his head did he realize that it was from the table next to them. 3 big men in their 30s stood up and left. However, they seemed to have forgotten to leave the money for the tea, so the little boy chased after them. I forgot to bring some change today. I'll pay you another day. I'll owe you for now. When one of the big men saw the little boy chasing after him, he revealed a displeased expression. His eyes revealed an ominous glint as he pushed the little boy away and left. Dear customers, our tea stall is a small business. We don't accept credit. The little boy retreated a few steps. When he saw the big man's ominous appearance, his bright eyes revealed some fear. However, he immediately gathered his courage and chased after him. Blind brat, go away. The big man once again pushed the little boy away and pushed him to the ground. However, the little boy took the opportunity to hug the big man's leg and said, Dear customers, we really don't accept credit. You drank the tea, so you have to pay for the tea. Following this scene, it immediately attracted the attention of many people in the surrounding streets. Immediately, the entrance of the alley was densely packed with people. He actually didn't even pay for the tea. His character is really low. This grandfather and grandson depend on each other for survival. They rely on the money for tea to survive. Unexpectedly, there are people who don't pay for the tea. This is too much. Looking at the 3 burly men, although there weren't many good people in Dark City, when they saw that there were people who didn't even pay for tea for women, children, and the elderly, and bullied the weak, the old, and the sick, this was a big taboo in Jianghu. Many people immediately showed disdain towards the 3 burly men. The people who lived in the vicinity all knew that this tea stall was run by an old granny and her grandson. They bitterly struggled to survive. That old granny had lived in this small alley for several tens of years. As for how many years, no one could remember clearly. There were many people coming and going on the street, and there were many people who came and went. Most likely, no one had lived as long as that old granny. However, as time passed, the old granny also became older and older. There were also people who heard that the old granny's grandson was adopted. He was a little beggar that was picked up on the street in front of the alley. At that time, he was only 3 or 4 years old. When the old granny picked him up, he was already on the verge of death. However, he was lucky and survived. In the blink of an eye, 8 or 9 years had passed. The little boy was already 12 or 13 years old. He was already old enough to help the old granny sell tea. The grandfather and grandson had always relied on selling tea for a living. Their days were very simple and poor. However, one could often see the little boy's face rippling with a youthful smile. At this moment, being pointed at by the surrounding crowd, the three big men's faces turned ugly. "Little bastard, get lost." The big man whose leg was hugged by the little boy was furious. He fiercely kicked the little boy several meters away and fiercely fell to the ground. Then, the three of them planned to quickly leave. With so many onlookers pointing at them, they couldn't stand it. "You guys are a little too much." At this moment, a green figure wearing a cloak blocked the three big men's path. The person who came was Du Xiaofu, who was originally planning to leave. Seeing the scene before him, he couldn't bear it anymore. Du Xiaofu's eyes under the cloak looked at the three big men and lightly said, "Pay for the tea and apologize to the little boy. Then, pay 1,000 cultivation coins for the medical expenses and you can leave." "Are you okay?" Gu Xinyan also went to the little boy who fell and helped him up. "Thank you, sister. I'm fine." Hearing Gu Xinyan's voice, the little boy patted the dust on his plain but clean clothes. He judged that it was a sister who shouldn't be too old. Her bright eyes revealed a kind of intelligence. "Brat, who are you? Meddling in other people's business. Do you want to die? Get lost." When the big man heard Du Xiaofu's voice, he should be a young brat. Suddenly, a fierce light flashed in his eyes, and he looked like he was about to attack. In the dark city, no one talked about mercy. "I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it. Even if you're weak, you're miserable. Keeping your life is a disaster." When Du Xiaofu's voice fell, a fist strangely fell on the big man's chest. The big man didn't have time to react and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Poochie. As the blood spurted out, the fierce-looking man didn't even have time to scream before he fell to the ground. In an instant, he lost all signs of life. His eyes closed weakly, and the last thing he saw was fear and regret. "Sir, please spare our lives." When the two big men saw this, their legs suddenly trembled and they immediately knelt on the ground. They knew that they had met a strong expert. They were only in the Xiantian realm. In the eyes of the experts in the Dark City, they were no different from ants. "Pay for the medical expenses, pay for the tea, and take the body away," Du Xiaofu indifferently said. The two Xiantian realm cultivators weren't in the mood to kill them. They also didn't want to attract too much attention. Hearing this, the two big men didn't dare to delay. After leaving all the cultivation coins on their bodies, they hurriedly took their companion's body and left in a panic. They didn't dare to stay for a second longer. Good kill. That guy deserved to die. Looking at the big man being killed, the onlookers didn't have any pity. Chapter 305. Good job. That guy deserved to die. Looking at the big man being killed, the onlookers didn't have any pity in their hearts. Inside and outside the Dark City, this kind of thing was too common, not to mention that the unlucky guy really deserved to die. Seeing that the show had come to an end, the onlookers immediately began to disperse. Everything that had just happened in front of the tea stall seemed to have never happened. Du Xiaofu put away the cultivation coins of the two big men, which was far more than 1,000 cultivation coins. Then he walked to the front of the little boy and said, "Take it if you're not injured. Go buy some good food to nourish your body." "Thank you, big brother." The little boy nodded, his cheeks slightly flushed. Then he took a bag of cultivation coins from Du Xiaofu, but his eyes were curiously looking at Du Xiaoyao, who was on Du Xiaofu's shoulder. "This is the money for my tea. Keep the change." Du Xiaofu immediately gave the little boy a handful of cultivation coins, hinted at Gu Xinyan, and immediately turned to leave. "Didn't you say that you don't want to attract attention?" Gu Xinyan walked side by side with Du Xiaofu, her red lips slightly opened, her breath like an orchid. She usually didn't speak much, but for some reason, she was unconsciously interested in the young man in front of her. She herself couldn't tell the reason. Perhaps it was because she usually didn't speak much. Du Xiaofu said, "If we don't strike hard, those guys who bully the weak and fear the strong, even if they are honest today, they might come back to find trouble with this tea stall after we leave. Kill one, then the other two will have real scruples." Big brother, big sister, wait a moment. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the little boy behind him caught up, ran a few steps, and handed a few cultivation coins to Du Xiaofu and said, "My mother-in-law said that you guys are good people and told me to thank big brother and big sister, so I can't take your reward anymore." "Is that so? Okay." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and kept the few cultivation coins. His gaze was fixed on an old granny who was staggering at the tea stall. He saw that the old granny's hair was already completely white, like silver strands, shining with sparkling white light. At this moment, her head was lowered as she tidied the tea leaves. As if sensing Du Xiaofu's gaze, the old lady raised her head slightly with a smile in her eyes. Her face was full of wrinkles, but because she always had a smile on her face, the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes were like two opened fans, but she looked extremely kind and amiable. Du Xiaofu also nodded slightly. The granny seemed to be at least 80 years old. She didn't have any aura on her body, and the little boy didn't have any aura either. They were obviously ordinary people. The granny and grandson relied on a broken tea stall to survive in a place like Dark City. It was probably very difficult for them to survive. "Thank you, big brother and big sister." After the little boy finished speaking, he left happily with a childlike smile on his face. "That's great," Gu Xinyan said softly. She didn't know what she was talking about, but her beautiful eyes revealed a smile at this moment. Du Xiaofu turned around and looked at the Mu family's trading firm in front of him and said, "Let's go. I'll go find someone first. I hope I can find him." The entrance of the Mu family's trading firm was majestic and grand. There were two stone sculptures in front of the door, and the door was dazzling and magnificent. Inside the trading firm, there were people coming and going. It was very lively and business was booming. There was a dazzling lineup of goods in the trading company. It was too much for the eyes to take in. There were all kinds of things for cultivation, elixirs, all kinds of weapons, martial skills, spiritual herbs, cultivation methods, and even some unpopular defensive armors. Even the surrounding walls were hung with many weapons and armors. There are so many spiritual herbs. I want to eat them. There are also spiritual weapons. I really want to eat them. Du Xiaoyao followed Du Xiaofu into the trading firm. After seeing a lot of spiritual herbs and spiritual weapons in the weapons and spiritual herbs section, her eyes suddenly became fixed. If Du Xiaofu didn't pull her back, she would have rushed up and devoured them. It's indeed the Mu family's trading firm in the Dark City. It's not inferior to the big trading firms in the imperial capital. Gu Xinyan said softly. Although she was curious about the dazzling array of cultivation items on the first floor, she didn't show any interest. Obviously, she was already very knowledgeable. Ordinary items couldn't catch her eye. "What are the two of you looking to buy? Is there anything I can help you with?" Just as Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan were looking around, inside the trading firm, a smart young man walked up. His attitude was very polite. Du Xiaofu looked at the smart young man and said, "Do you have a person called Mu Jinghao here?" As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the smart young man's face suddenly changed. His eyes were full of vigilance, and then he asked, "Why are you looking for our young fort master?" "So it's the young fort master." Du Xiaofu's eyes were full of surprise. When he was in the dark forest, Du Xiaofu remembered that he had helped a young man called Mu Jinghao. He had a good impression of that young man, but that time, he had helped because he needed to deal with the people of the Black Fiend sect. Based on the principle that the enemy of my enemy is half a friend, Du Xiaofu had helped him. Later on, Du Xiaofu had almost forgotten about that matter. It was not until a few days ago when the auction of the Mu Clan Fort's trading firm was mentioned that Du Xiaofu remembered Mu Jinghao. At that time, he felt that the young man called Mu Jinghao had a high status in the Mu Clan Fort. If he could get his help, perhaps it would be of great help in the matter of the mysterious spiritual heavenly vine. Therefore, Du Xiaofu came to the Mu Clan's trading firm. In fact, he already had a plan in mind, but he did not tell the general and the others. He was also afraid that if there were any unforeseen circumstances, it was better to be careful. At this time, the person that Du Xiaofu wanted to look for in the Mu clan's trading firm was Mu Zhenghao. Although he knew that Mu Zhenghao had a high status in the Mu clan fort, when he heard the smart young man call him the young fort master, he was slightly surprised. Then, Du Xiaofu said to the smart young man, "I have some matters to discuss with him, but it's not convenient to tell you. Are you here now?" The young man looked at Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan, whose faces were covered by cloaks. His eyes moved slightly, but he did not directly tell Du Xiaofu whether Mu Zhenghao was here or not. Instead, he asked Du Xiaofu, "May I know who you are, Your Excellency?" "Who am I? Your young fort master probably doesn't know my name. If he is here, you can inform him that he had an appointment with me in the dark forest a few months ago, but I did not come. Now that I am in the dark city, I am here to look for him," Du Xiaofu said to the smart young man. Listening to Du Xiaofu's words, the young man felt that this person seemed to really know the young fort master. Moreover, in the dark city, no one would dare to behave atrociously in the trading house, let alone deliberately looking for the young fort master. The smart young man hesitated for a moment, then said to Du Xiaofu, "Your Excellency, please wait for a moment. I will go and inform the shopkeeper." After saying that, the smart young man immediately left in a hurry. He went to a corner of the trading house and whispered something to an old man who looked to be in his 50s. Then, the old man looked over from afar, and his gaze fell on Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan, sizing them up. "I didn't expect you to know the young fort master of the Mu fort." Gu Xinyan was surprised and said softly, "We don't have much of a friendship. In fact, we are just acquaintances." "Don't get your hopes up," Du Xiaofu said. He could roughly guess what Gu Xinyan was thinking in her heart. When Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the quick-witted young man had already walked over again. The old man in his 50s in the distance had already disappeared into the trading company. The quick-witted young man said, "The two of you, please wait in the inner hall first. The shopkeeper has gone to inform the young fort master. Looks like our luck isn't bad. At least the person we are looking for is here." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly, and then followed the clever young man through an inner door of the trading company. After walking through several corridors with hidden sentry posts, they arrived at a small hall. It was luxurious yet rather low-key, and it made people feel extremely comfortable staying in it. "Please wait for a moment. The shopkeeper has already gone to inform the young fort master." The quick-witted young man served Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan some fresh fruits and tea, and then retreated. Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan looked at each other and did not say anything. Gu Xinyan was not a talkative person. In the academy, other than meeting and exchanging a few words with those who were ranked at the top of the martial roll, she had always been otherworldly, and it was rare to see her. Even if some of the students of the same generation met her, there were not many who could still speak in front of her. In the entire Tianwu Academy, she was an existence that could only be looked at from afar and could not be touched. In the entire academy, she was the most untouchable girl. Du Xiaoyao jumped down from Du Xiaofu's shoulder and jumped onto a chair beside Du Xiaofu. It sat there like a monkey, looking lively and lovable. If Gu Xinyan didn't know how terrifying little demon Du was, she probably wouldn't have been able to stop herself from hugging it. However, after knowing the terror behind Du Xiaoyao's lovable and harmless appearance, Gu Xinyan could not help but think more about it. "Haha, if I'm not wrong, it must be little brother who is looking for me." Not long after, a hearty voice came from outside the door and a young man wearing a long gown walked in. The young man looked to be around 25 or 26 years old. When he entered the inner hall and saw Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan wearing cloaks, he did not find it strange. He must have just heard from the report that two people wearing cloaks were looking for him. Du Xiaofu looked at the young man in long gown. His face could not be considered extremely handsome, but it was filled with a heroic spirit. His face gave off a clean feeling. It was the young man in short gown, Mu Zhenghao, whom he met in the dark forest. "That's right, I'm here." Du Xiaofu stood up and took off the cloak on his head, revealing his resolute and determined face. "Sure enough, it's little brother. It's good that you're here. I've always remembered you as my savior. Since you're here, please stay here for a while. Let me do my best as a host." Mu Jinghao laughed heartily as he walked up to Du Xiaofu and gave him a warm bear hug. He seemed to be extremely happy. When he heard the report, he immediately sensed that the valiant young man in the dark forest had arrived. Thus, he immediately rushed over. It's time for the 8th watch. There are not enough fresh flowers, so Xiaoyu will write the 8th watch. It's mainly because I've been writing for 18 hours since dawn last night. I feel very tired and need to rest. Recently, I've received some suggestions from my readers that Martial God's World is less passionate than Martial God's World. Xiaoyu also felt that it might be because of the recent foreshadowing. As the Dark City and Tianwu Academy are related to the foundation of the book, the foreshadowing is a little longer. Xiaoyu has received everyone's suggestions and will speed up the plot and write in a passionate style. Finally, I would like to thank my brothers and sisters for their support. There are only a few days left at the end of the month. If there are any fresh flowers left, please send them to Xiaoyu as thanks. Chapter 306. I'm here to ask for your help. It's not an ordinary matter and might make things difficult for you. After a bear hug, Du Xiaofu did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Mu Jinghao looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled. Don't worry, there are many things I can help you with in Dark City. Just based on the fact that you saved my life in the dark forest, as long as it's something I can do, I will not refuse. Is it convenient to talk here? Du Xiaofu looked around and asked. Mu Jinghao looked at the expression on Du Xiaofu's face, and his expression turned serious. He then said, Let's talk in my courtyard. You happen to be staying at my place as well? Once we're in Dark City, you must let me do my best as a host. A moment later, in a small hall in a secluded courtyard, the three of them sat down. Under Mu Jinghao's puzzled gaze, Du Xiaoyao quietly leaned against Du Xiaofu's side. You can talk without worry now. I've already instructed that no one will come here. Mu Jinghao said to Du Xiaofu. Is the Mu clan's trading company going to auction the mysterious spirit, Heavenly Vine, tomorrow? Du Xiaofu did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. That's right. Are you interested in it as well? Mu Jinghao smiled and said, If you're interested, I can arrange for you to go to the auction tomorrow. Just leave everything to me. Of course I'm interested. Furthermore, I must retrieve the mysterious spirit, Heavenly Vine. Du Xiaofu said with a bitter smile on his face. Truth be told, I'm a student of Tianwu Academy. I believe that you should be able to understand why I'm saying this. You are also a student of Tianwu Academy? Mu Jinghao seemed surprised, but his expression did not change. That's right. Du Xiaofu then told Mu Jinghao everything that he could, including the matter of the ghost claw. After learning of this, Mu Jinghao was astonished. However, he did not show any signs of surprise. Instead, his expression became much calmer. Looking at Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan, who was wearing a red veil and wearing a cloak, he revealed a bitter smile and a little astonishment. He said, If that's the case, the rumored Tianwu Academy students involved in the battle at the Four Seas and last night were you too? I'm one of them. The others are my senior sister and senior brother. Du Xiaofu nodded. The whole city probably knew about this. As the young fort master of the Mu clan fort, he probably knew more than the average person. Sure enough, Mu Jinghao was no longer surprised. Instead, he asked curiously, Then who is the mysterious force that is dealing with you? The Mu clan fort had been investigating the mysterious faction as well. In fact, they were more concerned about it than Tianwu Academy. It's related to the Ghost Claw. It's said that they might be from a force called the Dark Nether Sect. Du Xiaofu remembered that the mysterious black-robed young man, Yi Piaoling, had mentioned that the masked experts were most likely from a force called the Dark Nether Sect. They were not from the Stone Dragon Empire. Dark Nether Sect. Hearing this, Mu Jinghao's expression suddenly turned serious. He seemed to have heard of the Dark Nether Sect as well. His expression was calm, but he looked at Du Xiaofu seriously and said, Little brother, I think I already know why you are here. You are a student of Tianwu Academy, and you are here for the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine. You must have two objectives, to take back the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine and capture the Ghost Claw, right? That's right. Gu Xinyan spoke to Mu Jinghao for the first time. Mu Jinghao looked at Gu Xinyan. He could faintly see that under the red veil, there was a beautiful face. He said, I already have a rough idea of why you are here. However, I don't know if you know how the Mu family business was able to establish itself in Dark City. Therefore, I feel that I should tell you. Mu Zhenghao paused for a moment. His gaze landed on Du Xiaofu and he said, the Mu clan fort is able to become one of the 4 major forces in the Dark Forest, and the Mu clan firm is able to become one of the top firms in Dark City. In a special place like Dark City, other than relying on strength, they also rely on integrity and rules. As long as someone puts something up for auction in the Mu clan firm, we will not care about who the person is or where the item came from. We will only auction it well and collect the commission. During this process, we will also be responsible for protecting the item until the auction ends. This is not only the rule of the Mu clan firm, but also the rule of the entire Dark City. If you want to bid for the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine, I can do my best to help. However, it is indeed difficult for me to help with other things. If I give you the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine, the Mu clan firm and the entire Mu clan fort will no longer be able to establish themselves in Dark City. Moreover, even if I want to help, I am afraid that many elders and my father will not agree. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Zhenghao looked at Du Xiaofu with a bitter and apologetic smile. He said, little brother, logically speaking, I cannot refuse your request. However, this is really not something that I can help with. Du Xiaofu naturally understood what Mu Zhenghao had said. As one of the 4 major forces in Dark City, it was impossible for the Mu clan fort to hand over the mysterious spirit, Heavenly Vine and Ghost Claw to him when he went to the Mu clan firm. Du Xiaofu knew that the Mu clan fort did not owe him anything. If it were someone else, the Mu clan fort would not have been so courteous. As for saving Mu Zhenghao in the Dark Forest, to Du Xiaofu, it was purely because he wanted to take the opportunity to deal with the Black Fiend sect. Back then, it was an unintentional action. This time, Du Xiaofu came to the Mu clan fort with the intention of trying his luck and hoping to get some help. He did not come here to threaten them. This was not Du Xiaofu's style and temperament. I understand. I have put you in a difficult position. Du Xiaofu nodded and took a deep breath. With a bitter smile, he looked at Mu Zhenghao and said, however, I still hope that you can help me or Tianwu Academy. Of course, I will not force you. If you help me, I will keep it in mind. If you don't help me, I can understand. It is also your duty. I am afraid that I will not be able to help you, Mu Zhenghao said with a bitter smile. If my guess is correct, there will be a strong person in the Mu clan fort guarding the Mu clan trading company during this period. It will most likely be the fort master of the Mu clan fort, who is your father, Fort Master Mu. If you can let us meet him, it will be fine, Du Xiaofu said to Mu Zhenghao after pondering for a while. Mu Zhenghao was silent for a while. He looked at Du Xiaofu, then at Gu Xinyan, and finally at Du Xiaofu. He was slightly surprised and asked, how do you know that my father is in the trading company? The mysterious spirit vine has attracted a lot of attention. There are many people who want the mysterious spirit vine. I am afraid that not only Fort Master Mu, but more than half of the strong people in the Mu clan fort will be in the trading company, Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Mu Zhenghao's eyes flickered slightly. He said to Du Xiaofu, wait for me here. I will talk to my father. I will try my best to help, but I cannot guarantee the outcome. No matter what the outcome is, I will still be grateful, Du Xiaofu said. You are welcome. Mu Zhenghao smiled bitterly. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, I still don't know your name. I have to tell my father who wants to meet him. Du Xiaofu smiled and said, Du Xiaofu? Mu Zhenghao nodded. His eyes changed again, and he left the courtyard. If you meet the fort master of the Mu clan fort, are you confident that you can get the Mu clan fort to help? We don't seem to have anything, Gu Xinyan said to Du Xiaofu as she watched Mu Zhenghao's back disappear. If I don't try, how would I know if there is a chance? Besides, I have no other choice now, Du Xiaofu said. You are still on the Academy's wanted list. You killed the seniors, arrested the law enforcement team, stole the spiritual herbs, and destroyed the herb farm. Why are you doing this for the Academy now? Gu Xinyan's face was covered by a red veil. She was puzzled. After 2 days of contact, she seemed to feel that the young man in front of her was different from the rumored ferocious young man. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and said with a hint of bitterness, the elders of the Academy want me to take back the mysterious spirit vine and capture Ghost Claw. Then, I will write off everything that happened in the past. So, I have no other choice. Is this reason enough? This reason is indeed enough. Gu Xinyan's beautiful eyes were stunned. Then, she smiled faintly and said, those elders really know how to order you around. But it also proves that they have good taste. In the quiet study, a few figures stood respectfully. Mu Zhenghao was among them. A burly man in his 40s sat upright, his appearance somewhat similar to Mu Zhenghao's. Although he wasn't particularly handsome, he had a heroic air about him. He had a well-built body, and his eyes shone brightly, exuding a dignified aura. This burly man was the current fort master of the Mu clan fort, Mu Mingqing. He was one of the top powerhouses in the entire Dark Forest. He had led the Mu clan fort to roam in the Dark Forest for decades and brought the Mu clan fort to its current status and power. Controlling a force and becoming an overlord wasn't something that could be done with absolute strength. In addition to absolute strength, extraordinary courage and strategy were indispensable. The Dark Nether sect. Why are they in the Dark City? Mu Mingqing murmured. There was a hint of doubt between his eyebrows. He then looked at Mu Zhenghao and said, Zhenghao, the young man you mentioned is called Du Xiaofu. Is he the young man who saved you in the Dark Forest? That's right. I think father must have heard of him, Mu Zhenghao said. Chapter 307. Du Xiaofu. Mu Mingqing's eyes flickered slightly when he heard this. He raised his head slightly and said, I heard that there's a write-in student in Tianwu Academy who defeated the top 10 freshmen in his batch, killed 2 seniors, crippled 3 seniors, resisted arrest, and stole Tianwu Academy's green bamboo spirit fruit. Recently, he set a record in the Tianwu Talisman stage and even ranked second in the combat realm. I heard that the young man's name is Du Xiaofu. I think it must be him, Mu Zhenghao said as he looked at his father. Mu Mingqing smiled faintly as he looked at Mu Zhenghao and said, I didn't expect Tianwu Academy to look for us. The Dark Nether sect is also involved in this matter. Tianwu Academy doesn't have much interaction with us. Since Ghost Claw placed the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine in our Mu clan fort, I'm sure you know what will happen to the Mu clan's trading company and Mu clan fort in the Dark Forest in the future if anything happens. I understand. Mu Zhenghao nodded. You understand, but you still came to me. Mu Mingqing asked Mu Zhenghao, he saved you once, which means that you've helped him. Even if you're his friend, you've done what you should do as a friend. However, as the young fort master of the Mu clan fort, you also have to do what you should do. Do you think we can help? Mu Zhenghao pondered for a while before looking at his father and saying seriously, from my point of view, I still think that if I can help, I'll definitely help. Mu Mingqing said, the Dark City has been peaceful for many years, but there are many undercurrents. Now that an external force has suddenly joined, the situation will change. Do you understand the change? I understand. Father, haven't you been worried all this time? Mu Zhenghao hesitated for a moment, and then he took a deep breath and said, Ghost Claw intentionally put the profound spirit Heavenspan vine up for auction in my Mu clan trading company. Obviously, he intentionally attracted the people from Sky Martial Academy. If those mysterious people are really from the Dark Nether sect, then it's very likely that they were attracted by Ghost Claw. The mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine was placed in the Mu clan's trading house, and even the Mu clan's trading house was part of the scheme. Perhaps this time, the Dark City, which has been peaceful for a long time, will start to become turbulent because of the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine. My Mu clan fort will bear the brunt of it. I wouldn't dare to plot against you. Ghost Claw just wants to make use of the Mu clan fort. Mu Mingqing looked at Mu Zhenghao and said, You are my son and also the young master of the Mu clan fort. All the uncles in the Mu clan fort have always admired you, so I will ask you again about this matter. As the young fort master of the Mu clan fort, this matter is of great importance. I can't make the decision. Moreover, I can't represent the Mu clan fort. The only one who can represent the Mu clan fort is you, father. Mu Zhenghao said solemnly, however, personally, I hope that father can help him. The fact that he came to me proves that he trusts me. In the Dark Forest, he saved me but did not ask for anything in return. I also believe in his character. With his talent, he is destined to achieve great things in the future. If I help him this time, I will be his friend in the future. If I and the Mu clan fort are in trouble in the future, I will ask him 10 times, and he will definitely not reject me. I'm willing to bet on this. Mu Mingqing did not speak. He only looked at Mu Zhenghao. After a long time, he looked at the other middle-aged men and a few burly young men in the study and said, "Do any of you have anything to say?" The few of them looked normal, as if they had nothing to say. "Big brother, I believe in Zhenghao and you." Only a burly man in his 40s walked out. He was dressed in a short robe and had a strong build. He looked at Mu Mingqing and Mu Zhenghao and said, "However, I feel that there is no reason for us to place our bet on Tianwu Academy. Tianwu Academy is no longer what it used to be." This time, they were attacked without any scruples and were unable to retaliate. Moreover, we are placing our bet on a young man. Even if he is extraordinary, he is still just a brat who is still wet behind the ears. Mu Zhenghao looked at the burly man and asked, "Fifth uncle, what do you mean?" The burly man smiled at Mu Zhenghao and said with a grin, "It's simple. Isn't that brat extraordinary? Doesn't he want to see Big Brother? Outside the courtyard is the drill ground where Big Brother usually cultivates. I will wait for him there. If he can defeat me, I will let him in. As for whether Big Brother agrees to help him in the end, I don't care. However, if he can't even defeat me, he doesn't need to see Big Brother." This, Mu Zhenghao's face turned serious. He knew how powerful his fifth uncle was. "Zhenghao, let's do it this way. If he wants to see me, it's not too much to ask for your fifth uncle's permission first. Once your fifth uncle agrees, all the uncles in the Mu family fort will agree." Mu Mingqing nodded at Mu Zhenghao. In a small hall in the secluded courtyard, Du Xiaofu, Gu Xinyan, and Du Xiaoyao were seated and waiting for Mu Zhenghao. "I'm so bored. Why don't you give me some spiritual herbs to eat?" Suddenly, Du Xiaoyao turned around and looked at Du Xiaofu with her pale golden eyes. She looked very pitiful. Du Xiaofu knew that behind Du Xiaoyao's pitiful look, there was an absolute cruelty. However, he still took out a bunch of spiritual herbs from his chinkuan bag and handed them to Du Xiaoyao. There were quite a lot of them. Du Xiaoyao did not say that Du Xiaofu was stingy this time. She took the spiritual herbs and stuffed them into her mouth one by one. She ate the spiritual herbs that were glowing, fragrant, and fluctuating with energy as if they were snacks. She slowly chewed them raw. Gu Xinyan watched from the side. Under the red veil, her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. Du Xiaofu was neither fast nor slow. His expression was indifferent. Under the red veil, Gu Xinyan seemed to be even more nervous than Du Xiaofu. In the end, Gu Xinyan could not help but look at Du Xiaofu. She asked, "Aren't you anxious? If the fort master of the Mu family fort does not want to see you, we don't seem to have any other choice." Mu Zhenghao is back. Du Xiaofu straightened his body. His expression did not change much. Only he knew that it would be strange if he was not nervous. However, in front of a woman, it was better to pretend to be calm. As soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, Mu Zhenghao appeared in the small hall. He looked at Du Xiaofu and spread his hands. He did not beat around the bush and said helplessly, "I have good news and bad news. The good news is that my father is willing to see you. However, there is also bad news. My fifth uncle is guarding outside my father's door. If you want to go in, you have to defeat my fifth uncle." Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan looked at each other. Then, Du Xiaofu stood up and looked at Mu Zhenghao. He asked, "Young fort master, what is your fifth uncle's cultivation level? Just call me by my name. If you think highly of me, I should be a few years older than you. You can call me brother." Mu Zhenghao patted his chest and said, "Brother Zhenghao." Du Xiaofu nodded. "Okay, then I'll take advantage of you." Mu Zhenghao smiled, but then his expression turned serious. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "My fifth uncle's cultivation level is at the early stage of the martial lord realm. However, he has reached the late stage of the martial lord realm and is close to the peak. He has not found an opportunity to break through. It seems that he is the weakest among my father's sworn brothers. You can only see Fort Master Mu if you defeat him. Let me do it." Gu Xinyan stood up and covered her face with a red cloak. However, under the red cloak, her graceful curves could not be hidden. They were exquisite and alluring. Gu Xinyan did not know Du Xiaofu's true strength. However, She was worried that Du Xiaofu would be defeated by a martial lord who had just reached the peak of the martial lord realm. After all, as far as she knew, Du Xiaofu had not even set foot in the spiritual pulse realm. The Mu clan fort's intentions were clear. They were testing and rejecting him. In fact, there was more of a rejection than a test. He could only see the fort master if he defeated a martial lord. If he could not defeat the fort master, he could only leave. At that time, there would be nothing to say. Of course, Gu Xinyan knew that the Mu clan fort could not be blamed for this. From the perspective of the Mu clan fort, they were already being very polite. Hearing Gu Xinyan's words, Mu Zhenghao did not know the identity of the woman in the cloak. However, from her indifferent tone, it was not difficult to tell that the woman in red did not seem to take a martial lord who had just reached the peak of the martial lord realm seriously. Mu Zhenghao was suspicious, but he did not show it. He just shook his head and smiled bitterly. I'm afraid that won't do. I think fifth uncle wants to spar with brother Xiaofu. Let me do it. Du Xiaofu looked sideways at Gu Xinyan and said. He then looked at Mu Zhenghao and a smile appeared on his resolute face. Brother Zhenghao, please lead the way. I also want to experience the unique skills of the Mu clan fort. Brother Xiaofu, you should be careful. My fifth uncle's fist is more powerful. Among my father's sworn brothers, only my fifth uncle cultivates the power of the physical body. The strength of his body is comparable to a spiritual weapon. Mu Zhenghao reminded Du Xiaofu and then led the way. He led Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan out of the small hall. In the picturesque courtyard, there was a small square that was not too big. The small square was not small. Its diameter was dozens of feet wide. The square was covered with thick, strange rocks. There were various kinds of weapons placed around it. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, spears, staffs, and chains. Du Xiaofu followed Mu Zhenghao through several corridors before arriving at the small square. Looking around, there were no less than 200 to 300 people around the small square. They were all quite young, and there were even quite a few youths among them. Standing in front of them were a few burly men and old men. A few martial lords. When Du Xiaofu's gaze landed on the few old men and the burly man, his eyes immediately moved. There were at least 3 martial marquee experts among them. They are indeed one of the 4 major forces in the Dark Forest. Du Xiaofu thought to himself. To be able to casually bring out a few martial lords, this kind of strength was not ordinary. Chapter 308. Brother Xiaofu, my fifth uncle is called Lu Linqiao. I don't know why there are so many people here, so please be careful. Mu Zhenghao whispered apologetically into Du Xiaofu's ear. Seeing so many people here, it was obvious that his fifth uncle wanted the young disciples of the Mu clan fort to come out and broaden their horizons. There was also the possibility that he wanted to embarrass Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu nodded and did not say anything else. His gaze passed through the crowd and landed on a courtyard in front of him. There was a rather obscure aura coming from there, and it was difficult to detect it. As Du Xiaofu arrived, the gazes of the people in the plaza all landed on Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan. Most of them were filled with curiosity. Brat Du Xiaofu, come on up. Let me see how capable the students of Tianwu Academy are. A burly man in his 40s walked out. He was dressed in a short robe and had a muscular build. His gaze had already landed on Du Xiaofu. Based on Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan, it was not difficult to figure out Du Xiaofu's identity. Without much hesitation, Du Xiaofu stepped forward under the gazes of the crowd. He raised his head slightly and looked at the burly man. This should be the fifth uncle Lu Linqiao that Mu Zhenghao had mentioned. His skin was yellow and towering, as if there was power erupting from his body, as expected of someone who cultivated the physical body. Those who cultivated the physical body could use their body as a spiritual weapon. Once they succeeded in cultivating their body, they would be extremely terrifying. Greetings, fifth uncle Lu. Cupping his fists, Du Xiaofu greeted Lu Linqiao with a smile. Since he was Mu Zhenghao's fifth uncle, it was not a loss for him to address him as fifth uncle. You must be Du Xiaofu. How courteous. How about this? As long as you can tie with me, I'll let you in. When Lu Linqiao saw Du Xiaofu being so courteous and addressing him as fifth uncle Lu, Lu Linchao initially wanted to teach this brat from Tianwu Academy a lesson in front of the younger generation of the Mu fort. However, as the saying goes, one does not slap a smiling face. Seeing how courteous this purple-robed young man was, he naturally could not bring himself to make things difficult for him. Hearing Lu Linchao's words, Du Xiaofu smiled again and said calmly, "Thank you, fifth Uncle Lu. This kid called Du Xiaofu is indeed not simple." In front of the crowd from the Mu clan fort, an old man looked at Du Xiaofu with a flicker in his eyes. To be able to remain calm in front of old Five, he is the most extraordinary young man I have ever seen. He is even stronger than Zheng Hao. A large man said, "Don't try to curry favor with him. Make your move. If you are not strong enough, I will not go easy on you." In the field, Lu Linchao said to Du Xiaofu. In the entire dark forest, he was absolutely famous. Although his cultivation was not the strongest in the entire dark forest, his physique was well trained. Even the strong people in the dark forest were wary of him. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Linchao took a big step forward and an aura began to surge from his body. He said, "Brat, don't blame me for bullying you. You make your move first. This is the drill ground that is paved with black steel rocks. Don't worry about it. Even I can't destroy this place. A guest will follow the host's wishes. I will do as you say." Du Xiaofu nodded and the aura on his body suddenly fluctuated. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his long sleeve and a faint golden chi fluctuation suddenly surged out. As soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, the aura on his body fluctuated. Everyone around could immediately feel that the whole space seemed to have solidified. The young man named Du Xiaofu was already extraordinary. This brat seems to be quite strong. Feeling Du Xiaofu's aura, Lu Linchao's eyes moved slightly and he was quite surprised. Whether he is strong or weak, we will know after we try. Fort Master Mu, I will definitely meet you today. At the same time, a faint golden light surged within Du Xiaofu's clear eyes. The profound energy in his body surged, and he stomped his foot on the thick and strange rock floor. Golden, profound energy gushed out from the soles of his feet, and his figure instantly pounced towards Lu Linchao. "Haha, you are quite arrogant at such a young age. I just don't know if you have the strength." Lu Linchao laughed and the aura around his body suddenly swept out. A terrifying and vigorous aura fluctuated. Looking at Du Xiaofu's figure rushing over, he began to stretch out his hands. On his palms, there was a rune light surging. You will know after you try. In a short moment, the sound of wind breaking was heard. Du Xiaofu's figure still appeared in front of Lu Linchao like lightning. At this moment, there seemed to be a faint rune on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body under the cover of his purple robe. The seal formed by his hands and the energy fluctuated, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate like boiling water. A palm print directly slammed towards Lu Linchao. He seems to be quite strong, but it doesn't seem to be enough. Lu Linchao's eyes were shocked, but he immediately grinned. In the next moment, his strong and burly body directly rushed out like a ferocious beast. Boom! The burly body moved like lightning. Lu Linchao waved his hand and directly collided with the palm. That brat is quite arrogant. So what if I let him suffer a little? Doesn't he know that I cultivate my physical body? In the entire dark forest, how many people dare to go against me? As fast as lightning and as fast as lightning, the two of them instantly caused an uproar. A palm and a fist suddenly collided. Boom! The moment they collided, a low muffled sound immediately resounded. As the light from the runes burst forth, circles of visible ripples of energy spread out, causing the entire space to tremble. It was also at this instant that the golden light around Du Xiaofu's body blazed brightly, while his profound energy surged out explosively without holding back any longer. The imposing aura on his body instantly became fierce and shocking, and it was like a ferocious beast that had suddenly awakened from its slumber. Stormy wave palm. A thunderous sound suddenly rang out. Within Du Xiaofu's palm, waves of runic energy visible to the naked eye spread out. Waves of violent energy waves like stormy waves instantly collided with Lu Linchao. It was overbearing and fierce as it suddenly swept out. Stomp, stomp. Under the stormy waves of wind, Lu Linxiao's strong body was immediately forced back. He took 7 consecutive steps back, and with each step, cracks faintly appeared on the hard stone floor. At this moment, Lu Linxiao's gaze suddenly became shocked. His right hand quietly drooped down and his 5 fingers faintly curved. At this moment, only Lu Linxiao himself knew that his palm was currently numb and painful. It was as if his palm had collided with the hardest rock. Du Xiaofu's body only leaned back slightly and did not retreat a single step. Before entering the heavenly martial talisman realm, Du Xiaofu was already able to kill a Xianyun scarlet dragon that was comparable to a martial lord. And after coming out of the heavenly martial talisman realm, his comprehension had improved greatly and his strength had also increased. From Mu Jinghao's words, Du Xiaofu learned that Lu Linxiao cultivated his physical body. It was very powerful and comparable to a spirit weapon. However, no matter how powerful his physical body was, it would be difficult to compare with the Xianyun scarlet dragon's body. Naturally, Du Xiaofu would not care too much. It's really a good physical body. Du Xiaofu was also quite surprised by the palm strike just now. Lu Linxiao's physical body was indeed extremely powerful. In terms of physical body alone, he was definitely the strongest person that Du Xiaofu had encountered so far. Such a scene occurred. With one strike, Lu Linxiao was forced to retreat. Everything around him calmed down. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the field, and all of them were dumbfounded. Many of the Mu clan fort's disciples had their jaws dropped. They were so shocked that they could not close them for a long time. At this moment, Gu Xinyan's beautiful eyes, which were covered by a red veil, were also moved. I must have been careless. I must have been careless. His gaze was fixed on Du Xiaofu. After a short pause, Lu Linxiao pounced. This time, he took the initiative to attack. For Lu Linxiao, he thought that he must have been careless just now. It was absolutely impossible that he would be forced to retreat so pathetically by a young man. His figure was like lightning, moving like thunder. Like an afterimage, Lu Linxiao instantly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu with a terrifying aura. Not only is his physical body strong, but his speed is also fast. Du Xiaofu looked at Lu Linxiao, who was rushing toward him. Lu Linxiao's figure rapidly enlarged in his pupils. His speed was also extremely terrifying. It was so fast that it was difficult for Du Xiaofu to detect it with his current mind power. Boom! In a short moment, Lu Linxiao appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Accompanying him was a fist print wrapped in runes. Lu Linxiao's martial marquee realm aura erupted at this moment without holding back. Before his fist, he wanted to blast the space apart. The surroundings were distorted. His aura was as oppressive as a wild beast, as if it could suppress everything and blast the space apart. Wave surfing free steps. Du Xiaofu was not afraid of Lu Linxiao's physical body, but he did not have to choose to take it head-on. After all, he was in the Pulse realm, and Lu Linxiao was in the Martial Marquee realm. He activated the wave-surfing free steps, and his figure was like a god. His feet slanted, and suddenly, at an incredible angle, his body leaned back in a strange arc bang. Lu Linxiao's fist exploded in the air before Du Xiaofu's body leaned. The fist shattered the air, and a low muffled sound was heard. However, Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared before the fist. Lu Linxiao's martial marquee realm cultivation was not just for show. His fist changed into a claw print. Suddenly, the rune light flashed, as if it was going to tear the space apart, and directly locked onto Du Xiaofu's throat. The claw print swept over, and it rapidly enlarged in Du Xiaofu's slanted eyes. However, just as the claw print was about to reach his throat, Du Xiaofu stood on the center of gravity. His chi surged, and his body once again drew a strange arc, as if drawing a beautiful arc pattern around him, and just happened to avoid Lu Linxiao's claw. Boy, you are quite fast. Let's see how many moves you can dodge. Lu Linxiao could not stand it anymore. Clenching his claw print, he once again formed a fist and chased after Du Xiaofu. Boom! A fist print that was about to explode the space appeared in front of Du Xiaofu again. A series of changes and attacks, fast, accurate, and fierce, were enough to prove Lu Linxiao's strength. As a martial marquee realm cultivator, even in the whole continent, he could be regarded as one of the strongest. Then I won't dodge. Du Xiaofu did not dodge again. Just as the fist was in front of him, there was a slight smile at the corner of his mouth. Today's update is finished. Brothers, go to bed early after reading. Chapter 309. Bang! A low, muffled sound suddenly rang out from Du Xiaofu's chest. The punch shattered the faint golden defensive halo around Du Xiaofu's body and landed on Du Xiaofu's chest. Du Xiaofu had not resisted Lu Linxiao's first punch at the start because Lu Linxiao had taken advantage of the situation to launch his first punch. Now, Lu Linxiao's punch had been launched in a panic. It was the same punch, but its power was much weaker. And just as Lu Linxiao's punch was about to land, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly flashed with a golden light. He looked around arrogantly, and a domineering and terrifying aura erupted like a torrent. The golden talisman patterns on the surface of his body surged, as if a golden-winged rock had spread its wings. In that instant, Du Xiaofu's hand was like a cattail leaf fan. As the faint golden talisman patterns flickered and coalesced, he slapped out viciously at Lu Linxiao. Wong! Dense layers of golden talisman patterns shook the air, forming an arc-shaped golden dent in space. It was like the golden wings of a golden-winged rock. Suddenly, like thunder, it slammed viciously into Lu Linxiao's chest with a force that could crush all things. Du Xiaofu's hand slapped down on Lu Linxiao's body. In that instant, the golden talisman patterns glowed brightly, as if suppressing everything. The air hummed with the sound of wind and thunder. A punch for a palm. Du Xiaofu chose to fight directly. His cultivation level could not compare to that of a martial lord. But in terms of physical strength, Du Xiaofu was not afraid at all. Bang! A terrifying aura was released, and a storm swept through the air above the square. Crackle! Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, everything was like a hot knife through butter. Lu Linxiao's body was instantly sent flying, like a bird with broken wings. Poochie! Lu Linxiao finally fell to the ground, causing the ground to crack. His body brushed against the ground for several dozen meters before he finally stabilized himself. Ding ding! Du Xiaofu's body was also retreating. He staggered backward for 7 steps. With every step he took back, the ground of the drill ground that Lu Linxiao had boasted was covered with hard black steel rocks that were hard to destroy, cracked under Du Xiaofu's feet. Humph! Du Xiaofu took the last step to stabilize his body. He let out a faint groan from his throat, as if he had been greatly affected. Lu Linxiao's punch, coupled with the fact that he was a cultivator of the physical body, was absolutely powerful. Even if the protective profound chi had resisted a lot of the force, the impact was still very terrifying. However, Du Xiaofu's current situation was much better than Lu Linxiao's. Victory and defeat were decided immediately. Hoo-hoo! Around the drill ground, all the disciples of the Mu clan fort narrowed their eyes. That purple-robed young man was at most 16 or 17 years old, but his strength was so terrifying that even Elder Lu, who was at the martial lord realm, was severely injured in 2 moves. Unbelievable. Du Xiaofu's aura is only at the complete pulsation realm, but his strength is so terrifying. An old man was so shocked that he could not recover from his shock. His physical body is too terrifying. It's much stronger than Old Five's physical body. It's insane. A burly man exclaimed. If Old Five's physical body is comparable to the top-notch demonic beasts on the Earth Beast ranking, then Du Xiaofu's physical body is comparable to the top-notch demonic beasts on the Heavenly Beast ranking. If they were at the same cultivation level, Old Five wouldn't even be able to resist. Another burly man exclaimed in shock. Are all the students of Tianwu Academy so terrifying? I haven't heard of Tianwu Academy's students being so terrifying in the past. Many disciples of the Mu clan fort were shocked. He's too powerful. It hasn't been long, and he's already so terrifying. At this moment, Mu Zhenghao's face was filled with shock and astonishment. He still remembered how terrifying Du Xiaofu was back in the dark forest. However, compared to now, the difference was huge. Gu Xinyan's face was covered by a red veil, so no one could see the change in her expression. However, her delicate body trembled at that moment. Lu Linxiao stood up as dark red blood seeped out of his mouth. He looked at Du Xiaofu in front of him and was deeply shocked. If it was before, Lu Linxiao would never have believed that a young man at the complete pulsation realm could defeat him. Moreover, he had defeated him in a head-on manner. To him, this was the most shocking blow. Fifth brother, let him in. A hearty voice came from the courtyard in front of him. The voice wasn't loud, but it reverberated around the drill ground and fell clearly on the drill ground. Kid, go in. Lu Linxiao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth helplessly as he looked at Du Xiaofu in shock. Fifth Uncle Lu, you haven't lost yet. Du Xiaofu smiled. As a martial marquee realm expert, although he had just suffered a great loss, Du Xiaofu knew that Lu Linxiao had not lost the ability to fight again. As a martial marquee realm expert, he would not be defeated so easily. If they continued to fight, Du Xiaofu knew that Lu Linxiao would not necessarily be defeated. According to Du Xiaofu's knowledge, a martial marquee realm expert was far more powerful than a pulse spirit realm expert. In particular, the unique means and representatives of the martial marquee realm were at a level that a pulse spirit realm expert could not contend with. Kid, do you still want to fight? I've asked you to go in, so go in. Be careful that I don't change my mind. Lu Linxiao rolled his eyes at Du Xiaofu. He could not wait to teach this purple-robed kid a lesson. Didn't he know that he had been humiliated in front of the younger generation of the Mu clan fort? Even if they fought again, Lu Linxiao was not confident that he would win at this time. Although he still had the ability to fight again, he still had a trump card. However, Lu Linxiao could also feel that the purple-robed kid named Du Xiaofu had not used his strongest trump card. When the time came, it was still unknown who would win and who would lose. At this time, Du Xiaofu still wanted to fight. He must be deliberately making things difficult for Lu Linxiao to take revenge for making things difficult for him. Of course, Lu Linxiao did not know that he was overthinking. Du Xiaofu really did not have the intention to take revenge. Thank you very much, Fifth Uncle Lu. Du Xiaofu nodded, and then nodded to Gu Xinyan, indicating that they should go to see the fort master of the Mu clan fort together. The rest of you don't have to come in. Kid, you can come in alone. The rest of you can wait outside. Just as Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan were about to enter the courtyard together, the hearty voice was heard again. You go in. I'll wait for you outside. Gu Xinyan heard and said softly to Du Xiaofu. At this time, Du Xiaoyao also landed on her shoulder. Du Xiaofu nodded slightly and then entered the courtyard under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The surrounding disciples of the Mu clan fort were still in shock. After that, many people gathered around Lu Linxiao. Fifth Uncle, are you okay? Mu Zhenghao came in front of Lu Linxiao and could only smile bitterly at this time. His fifth uncle was severely injured in just 2 moves. This was something that he did not expect at all. I'm fine. That kid is really crazy. He's stronger than you, Lu Linxiao said bluntly, speaking the truth. Of course, I can't compare to him. Mu Zhenghao did not care. He knew that he was indeed no match for the fierce purple-robed youth. After entering the courtyard, Du Xiaofu went into the study based on his intuition. Then, he saw a burly man. He was not too handsome, but he had a heroic aura. He had the aura of a superior. There was no fluctuation of aura on his body, but it made people's hearts tremble for no reason. Greetings, Fort Master Mu. Du Xiaofu cupped his fist and bowed. Naturally, there was only the fort master of the Mu clan fort. From his appearance, one could tell that he was related to Mu Zhenghao. Mu Zhenghao had already stood up from his sitting position and slowly left the desk in front of him. He took a few steps to Du Xiaofu's side and stood with his hands behind his back. For no reason, Du Xiaofu felt a great pressure. This kind of pressure seemed to exist silently and was difficult to resist. It made people's hearts tremble for no reason. I already know who you are. Since you are Zhenghao's friend, you can call me uncle from now on, Mu Mingqing said. When Du Xiaofu heard this, he was slightly stunned. Then, he opened his mouth and said, Greetings, Uncle Mu. Mu Mingqing continued to look at Du Xiaofu and asked, Since you have already called me Uncle Mu, I will not beat around the bush with you. I know the reason why you are here. Tell me, why does the Mu clan fort want to help you? What kind of reward can you give me? I can't give the Mu clan fort any reward for the time being. Indeed, the Mu clan fort does not have to help me. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked straight at Mu Mingqing. Under the invisible pressure, he was neither servile nor overbearing. With a faint sense of pride, he said, however, if the Mu clan fort helps Tianwu Academy today, Tianwu Academy will owe the Mu clan fort a favor. I believe Fort Master Mu will weigh the pros and cons. A favor is the most worthless thing in the Dark City. Mu Mingqing smiled. He looked straight at Du Xiaofu and said, "You don't seem to be able to convince me." "You are wrong. Even though a favor is worthless in the Dark City, a favor from Tianwu Academy is. Everyone in the Empire would like to have Tianwu Academy owe them a favor," Du Xiaofu said as he looked at Mu Zhenghao. "What do you mean by that?" Mu Zhenghao asked with interest, as if he was intrigued. Tianwu Academy has existed for so many years and countless students have graduated from Tianwu Academy. Over the years, they have been scattered all over the world. Now that someone has stepped on Tianwu Academy's head, I believe there will be many people paying attention to this matter. They might be restricted by their status, or they might be observing the situation quietly. Therefore, it is inconvenient for them to intervene. However, if the Mu clan fort can help Tianwu Academy at this moment, I believe many people will remember the Mu clan fort. Perhaps one day, when the Mu clan fort needs help, these people will be able to help. Chapter 310. Translator. H2DH2 Mr. Du Xiaofu paused for a moment, looked at Mu Mingqing, and continued, "This is only one of the reasons. Tianwu Academy must also owe the Mu clan fort a huge favor. I believe that the dark forest is filled with turbulent undercurrents and unpredictable changes. Although the Tianwu Academy will not interfere in the matters of the dark forest, if the Mu clan fort needs to stay in the Tianwu Academy for a period of time, I believe that the Tianwu Academy will not reject the favor owed to them. I believe that this is enough. These are indeed tempting, and I am tempted by them. To be able to make Tianwu Academy owe you a favor, its value is definitely not below that of the profound spirit heavenspan vine. You have a sharp tongue, and you're not simple at all." Mu Mingqing looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled. However, he shook his head and said, "I have to say that if the Mu clan fort was not located in the Dark City, I would definitely be moved by your words." Mu Mingqing paused for a moment, then looked at Du Xiaogang and said, "However, you still do not understand the Dark City well enough. The Dark City is very realistic. Intangible things like human relationships pale in comparison to the Dark City. After witnessing the deceit and cruelty of the Dark Forest, no one will believe in intangible things like human relationships. Tangible benefits are the most important. I will give you one last chance. See if you can move me." Outside the courtyard, Gu Xinyan had been waiting quietly. She stood there quietly. Many Mu clan fort disciples could not help but steal glances at the graceful curve of her face under the red veil. An entire hour later, Du Xiaofu's figure finally appeared at the entrance under the gazes of many people. When Du Xiaofu walked to Gu Xinyan's side, Gu Xinyan asked, "What's the result?" Du Xiaofu nodded at Gu Xinyan and said softly, "I think we should prepare for the auction tomorrow. Let's go back first." Inside the study, Mu Mingqing stood by the window and watched the purple-robed figure leave. His eyes flickered, and he seemed to have thought of something. A faint smile appeared on his face as he murmured, "Time really flies. Big brother, did you promise that kid? Is our Mu clan fort really going to get involved in this mess?" A few burly men and elders walked over, including Lu Linqiao. Their gazes all fell on Mu Mingqing. Mu Mingqing looked at the crowd and finally looked at Lu Linqiao. "Fifth brother, didn't you notice anything when you fought with that kid?" As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Mingqing stretched out his hands from behind his back, and then a series of profound hand seals began to form in his hands. Waves of aura suddenly began to silently bloom. As Mu Mingqing's hand seal slowly took shape, Lu Linqiao and the others' expressions changed drastically. So this kid, Lu Linqiao, was the first to react. Then, he straightened his burly figure and said, "It seems that the Mu clan fort has no choice but to intervene this time." "That's right. We have no choice but to intervene." The old man and the burly man nodded in agreement. Time flew by, and it was nighttime again. Dark City was not dark at all. It was brightly lit, as if it was daytime. There were still people talking about the night when the Four Seas Inn was razed to the ground, but for the people of the Dark City, it was almost forgotten. For the Dark City, aside from the four major forces, it was unknown how many forces were destroyed every day and how many new forces would emerge every day. Not many people would remember it. They were already numb to it. All of this was just a topic for the people of the Dark City to talk about during their leisure time. Right now, the hottest topic in Dark City was the auction that would be held in the Mu Clan Trading Company tomorrow. It was rumored that the students of Tianwu Academy were involved in the battle at the Four Seas a few days ago, and the other group of experts were related to the Ghost Claw. This made people wonder if there would be a big show at the auction in the Mu Clan store tomorrow. Recently, there were many external forces that entered Dark City, and most of them were here for the mysterious spirit vine. Who would be the one to obtain the mysterious spirit vine in the end? The night was as dark as ink, and there were no stars or moon. Occasionally, there would be flashes of light in the sky, as if it was going to rain tomorrow. In a secluded courtyard, a 25 or 26-year-old silver-haired man stood by the window. His extremely glossy long silver hair flowed down like a waterfall. It was loosely tied up with a single colored ribbon. His eyes were currently looking at the ink-black night sky. The sky was constantly flickering with light as he softly said, "After tomorrow, after killing a few people, everything will no longer have anything to do with us." Behind the silver-haired man, a gray-robed man stood respectfully. The wide hat on the back of the gray-robed man covered his entire face, and only his eyes could be seen. In the dark night, his eyes were emitting a cold light. He looked at the silver-haired man and said in a low voice, "Everything is under our control. Should we close the net now? Everything can be settled as soon as possible. It's not the time yet. Let's settle it tomorrow." The silver-haired man's voice had a fleeting feeling to it. His eyes seemed to push people 1,000 miles away, causing people to involuntarily feel a chill in their hearts. He then continued, "It's best to be careful. After all, the Dark City still has a pavilion and a castle." "Yes." The gray-robed man nodded and replied respectfully. It was a vast complex of buildings and huge pavilions. They had an antique feel to them, but there were traces of evil aura in the air. "Tomorrow, we must get the mysterious spirit vine." In the hall, a middle-aged man in a brown robe said to a black-robed young man, "Don't worry, father. I will definitely get the mysterious spirit vine. No one can compete with us." The black-robed young man replied, as if he was confident. "Then," he said softly, "whoever dares to stand in the way of our black-killing sect is courting death." Night covered the sky, and the curtain of night covered Dark City. For the ordinary people in Dark City, they did not feel much. However, for the various forces, tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. When the first ray of light spread out from the eastern horizon, many places in Dark City seemed to have suddenly awakened. Many people began to walk out, and all of them were looking at the Mu Family Trading Company. Today's auction of the Mu Family Trading Company was not simple. It was said that other than the mysterious spirit vine, which had not been auctioned yet, many other treasures would be auctioned in this auction. It was also said that this was definitely the rarest auction in the history of the Mu Family Trading Company, and many treasures would appear. Therefore, this kind of attraction was a huge temptation for any cultivator. In the room, the morning light slowly spread out outside the window, leaving mottled traces in the room. On the bed, a purple-robed young man, who appeared to be 16 or 17 years old, was already a young man. He had a resolute face and a determination that was rarely seen in people of the same age. As the sky gradually brightened, the faint golden circle of light around the purple-robed young man's body began to slowly enter his body. The eyelashes on his eyes faintly trembled a few times, and then he opened his eyes. The faint golden light in his eyes flickered and slowly disappeared, becoming clear and bright. Huff! When he spat out a mouthful of turbid air, a domineering and fierce aura suddenly spread out from the purple-robed young man's body, like a real rock spreading its wings, causing the entire room to tremble. "I'm almost going to break through again. I can't break through yet. I'll continue to suppress it and stabilize my foundation. I'll be as firm as a rock." The purple-robed young man softly muttered to himself. This purple-robed young man was naturally Du Xiaofu. After a night of breathing, he was almost about to break through again. However, Du Xiaofu once again forcefully resisted the temptation of breaking through, and with great difficulty, he once again suppressed it. Du Xiaofu had not allowed himself to break through. He continuously suppressed it, and it was better for his foundation to be as firm as possible. Breaking through was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Feeling the abundant, profound energy within his body, a slight smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. He took out the small pagoda from his bosom and lightly stroked it. He didn't know when his big brother Jin Qingchun would come out of closed-door training, nor did he know when his big brother Jin Qingchun would be able to return to his peak. After a short while, Du Xiaofu put away the small pagoda, and only then did he jump off the bed. Then, he put on a cloak that covered his face from yesterday, pushed open the door, and walked out. In the small hall, Gu Xinyan seemed to have been waiting for a long time, while Du Xiaoyao sat quietly to the side. In addition, Mu Jinghao was also waiting in the small hall. When he saw Du Xiaofu, he said, "Brother Xiaofu, everything has been arranged. Someone will bring you to the VIP room." "Thank you, Brother Jinghao." Du Xiaofu nodded his head to express his thanks. "It's nothing. I'm a little busy today, so I can't accompany you. I'll take my leave first. See you later." After Mu Jinghao said his goodbyes, he hurriedly left. Today's auction of the Mu family trading company was extraordinary. As the young fort master of the Mu family fort, he naturally had no free time. Looking at Mu Jinghao's back as he left, Gu Xinyan was still wearing the red veil that covered her face. She looked sideways at Du Xiaofu through the red veil and said, "You still haven't told me what you talked about with the Mu family fort master yesterday. Is the Mu family fort really going to help us?" Du Xiaofu's expression changed slightly, and then he said softly, "I don't know what to say. Let's go to the auction first. We'll know what will happen today then." "All right." Gu Xinyan did not ask any more questions because she trusted the young man in front of her. Chapter 311. It started to drizzle in the dark city today, but it did not affect the liveliness in front of the Mu family's trading house. Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan had stayed in the courtyard behind the Mu family's trading house last night. When they walked out of the door, there was a clever young man waiting to lead the way. It was the same clever young man they had seen in the trading house yesterday. The auction would be held in the Mu family trading company. The Mu family trading company occupied half the street, so there was no need for them to worry about not having enough space. However, when Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan arrived at the auction with the quick-witted young man, they couldn't help but feel shocked when they saw the densely packed crowd in the streets and alleys. They had underestimated the popularity of the Mu family's auction. On the densely packed streets, the front of the auction venue was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. However, under the guidance of the quick-witted young man, Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan once again headed for the VIP room. After passing through a VIP passageway that was guarded by many Mu fort guards, they easily arrived at the auction venue. The entire auction hall was circular in shape, with a huge dome covering the top. The enormous building area was astonishing. It had a total of 3 floors and could accommodate more than 10,000 people. Not a single stone pillar could be seen inside, making it seem even more imposing. As expected of the Mu clan fort, upon entering the auction house, Du Xiaofu even saw a few of the Mu clan fort's elders that he had seen at the drill ground yesterday. A few of the elders were casually standing quietly in the auction house, and the invisible aura that emanated from their bodies was enough to make people feel oppressed. At this moment, there were still many figures walking out from the VIP passageway. All of them were led by the disciples of the Mu fort. This caused Du Xiaofu to involuntarily turn his head to take a few more glances. Those who could enter the VIP passageway were naturally not ordinary people. These people were the majority of the true buyers in today's auction. "Sirs, the VIP rooms are on the 3rd floor. There are a total of 99 rooms. It's not easy to enter the VIP rooms of the Mu family trading company," the quick-witted young man introduced as he led Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan to the 3rd floor of the auction house. They entered one of the best VIP rooms in the auction house. The VIP room wasn't big. It was only a few feet in size, but the decorations were extremely elegant and luxurious. Sitting in the private room, one could overlook the entire auction hall below. Immediately, one could feel a different feeling, exuding a noble aura. One could also clearly see the circular auction stage in the middle of the auction hall. One could clearly see the items being auctioned. The window in front of the VIP room was hung with a special downward slanted Venetian blind, allowing one to have a clear view of the entire auction hall. However, no one would be able to spy on the situation inside the VIP room. It was extremely private. Inside the VIP room, there were already a lot of fresh fruits and juices. After the clever young man brought Du Xiaofu and Gu Xinyan into the VIP room, he turned around and left. What a lively place. As expected of the Dark City, there are quite a few experts here today. Gu Xinyan looked at the crowd of people who were pouring into the auction hall and sighed. Even the busiest auction in the capital couldn't compare to this scale. At this time, Gu Xinyan, who was also a soul talisman master, sensed with her mental energy that there were already many experts in the auction hall. The attraction of the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine is really not small. Du Xiaofu murmured softly. With his mental energy, he also sensed many obscure auras. There were many martial marquee experts, and there were even many soul talisman masters among them. Gu Xinyan didn't speak again, but it could be seen that she was quite nervous. However, she immediately suppressed the emotions in her heart. Her beautiful eyes under the red veil slightly closed, and she began to close her eyes and rest. Du Xiaofu didn't speak again, waiting for the auction to officially begin. From time to time, he sensed many people entering the VIP room, but it was also difficult to see who they were. However, when those figures entered the third floor, they brought with them waves of invisible auras, which made Du Xiaofu feel a little depressed. There was no lack of experts coming. Those auras made Du Xiaofu feel a sense of oppression and danger. The auction hall, which could accommodate tens of thousands of people, was gradually filled to the brim. All kinds of discussions and conversations gathered together, making the entire auction hall extremely noisy and noisy. Looks like there are quite a few people here for the mysterious spirit, Heavenly Vine today. When the entire auction hall was filled to the brim with people, Du Xiaofu's eyes moved as he looked at the entire auction hall. Gu Xinyan opened her slightly closed eyes, feeling the sea of people in the auction hall. A dignified look flashed across her beautiful eyes, and she said softly, "Looks like whoever gets the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine today will not have a good ending. Once they leave the Dark City, they will become the target of everyone." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and didn't speak. Gu Xinyan was worried. Du Xiaofu naturally understood that there were no rules in the Dark Forest. Even if someone got the mysterious spirit Heavenly Vine today, others would not let it go so easily. Once they left the Dark City, they would become the target of everyone's hunting. Buzz. At that moment, a bell rang in the auction hall. It was low and deep, and immediately suppressed all the noise in the auction hall. Then, rows of figures slowly walked out from the auction hall. Waves of aura suddenly faintly fluctuated, faintly sealing off the entire auction hall. Those who came were the absolute powerhouses of the Mu family fort. Among their aura, there were a few who were at the martial lord realm. Du Xiaofu looked over and saw that Lu Linxiao, who had fought with him yesterday, was among them. There was no doubt that the Mu family fort was one of the 4 major forces in the Dark Forest, but in the lawless Dark City, they had no choice but to be careful about this auction. If anything went wrong in this auction, the Mu clan fort would be utterly disgraced in the Dark Forest. One should know that this auction had unknowingly become a little different. It was no longer a simple auction. As the powerhouses from the Mu family fort walked out one by one, they entered the auction hall. Under the gazes of many people, a rather enchanting lady walked up. This lady looked like she was only 27 or 28 years old. The aura on her body might not be very strong, but her enchanting attire was extremely impactful. Immediately, many people in the auction hall stared at her enchanting body. Around the auction venue, there were many burning gazes that couldn't wait to tear apart the clothes on that enchanting figure that she wasn't wearing much to begin with. Especially when looking from above, as the lady walked up to the auction stage, one would be able to catch a glimpse of her beauty. The enchanting lady stepped onto the auction stage and smiled before saying anything. Then, she bowed slightly to the people around her. When she bowed, her fair bosom seemed to be jumping out. Immediately, many people in the surrounding almost had a nosebleed. Thank you for coming to the auction organized by the Mu family fort today. Thank you for coming. The lady stood up. At this moment, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people in the auction hall, and the invisible aura of many powerhouses shrouding her, she still looked indifferent. Based on this point alone, it proved that this lady was not ordinary. Otherwise, an auction of this level would not allow ordinary people to participate. The lady's voice was crisp and clear, reverberating throughout the auction hall. It was enough for everyone to hear her clearly. Her style and tone were clean and concise. Then, she continued, since everyone is here for the auction today, I will not waste everyone's precious time. Then, let the auction begin. First, let's start with the first item of the day. When the lady's voice faded, she waved her hand and made a gesture behind her. Then, a graceful young lady walked out from the inner door of the auction hall. She held a crystal-clear jade plate in her hand and walked up to the auction stage. After circling the auction hall once, she finally placed the jade plate on the stone stage of the auction stage. Du Xiaofu looked down from the VIP room and saw a pill that was not even the size of a baby's fist on the jade plate. However, it was entirely greenish-white, with runes spreading out and flickering with multicolored light. As the pill appeared in the auction hall, a rich medicinal fragrance filled the entire auction hall. The light was dazzling, and the medicinal fragrance assailed the nostrils. Immediately, many people's gazes revealed a heated look. Not a bad pill. It looks delicious. Beside Du Xiaofu, Du Xiaoyao's pale golden eyes flickered. She greedily licked her lips with her tongue. Don't cause trouble for me. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to warn Du Xiaoyao. An initial marquee-grade spirit-connecting pill. If consumed by a peak meridian spirit stage cultivator, it can increase the chances of breaking through to the martial marquee realm by 30%. Most importantly, it can increase the chances of successfully merging the meridian spirit and martial vein by 50%. Although it is only at the initial marquee realm, it is priceless. Its value is often much higher than marquee realm mysterious realm pills. Looking down at the pill from above, Gu Xinyan could not help but reveal some surprise in her eyes. The appetizer of the auction was already a marquee realm pill. Moreover, it was the spirit-connecting pill that was priceless. It was enough to show the extraordinariness and background of the Mu family trading company. Du Xiaofu was also quite surprised at this moment. The value of a marquee realm pill was self-evident. I believe that many experienced and knowledgeable guests have already recognized it. That's right. The first item we're auctioning today is the soul-connecting pill at the initial level of the marquee level. I'll make a long story short. The soul-connecting pill at the initial level of the marquee level can increase the chances of breaking through to the martial marquee level by 30%. Most importantly, it can increase the chances of successfully merging the pulse spirit and the martial vein by 50%. On the market, it's definitely priceless. Even my Mu family trading company had a hard time obtaining one. Tomorrow is the last day of the month. Brothers who still have flowers, please send them. Don't forget, or they will be invalid. Also, number 1, you will continue to have a big explosion. He wants to break all the explosive chapters in the past 2 months. Please support him. In these 2 days, I believe that everyone can see that you has adjusted a lot of the plot and state. He is gradually getting closer to the hot-blooded passion. He feels that he has found the state that he should be in. Therefore, number 1 has a big explosion. Please support him. Thank you.